fantastic. This is GT racing right now.
He's got traction, he's got rhythm, both of them! Maloney!
Oh, he's taken Anderson! Anderson's up top!
Oh my God! Oh! Big crash! Oh my goodness, half the field's gonna get rolled!
Sec's very close. These guys are going to want to make their way through the field very quickly.
Oh, there we go!
Oh no! That's massive! This is it! This is over! I can't believe this! Oh my God!
God, what?
Welcome one, welcome all to a SimSpeed TV presentation on the iRacing Esports Network. It's the international division of the Majors Series. Once again, round 7 of the most versatile hosted championship in sim racing. It's the Le Mans 2.4 hour. We got 2 hours and 24 minutes of multi-class prototype and GT racing coming for you tonight, and certainly there's going to be some jostling around of championship positions as usual in this series. My name is Reese Gardner. Joining me in the commentary box is Ryan Jones. Ryan, the first session of the night here is the Hyperpole session, and that is the top drivers from all 3 classes racing here tonight and making their way around the circuit to stake their claim for pole. It's going to be an interesting one. Everyone's going to get their own little space of this 13-kilometer Circuit de la Sarthe and stake their claim for pole.
Yeah, good evening, everyone, and going to be an interesting session there. So 18 cars on the track in total, 6 LMP1s, 6 GTEs, and 6 LMP2 cars as well. But obviously, as you mentioned, it's a 13-kilometer racetrack, so traffic's not going to be an issue. But if you can manage to put yourself in a situation where you get a nice little tow down the Mulsanne Straight, you're going to be in for a pretty decent lap time if you don't get held up after that. So there's definitely a bit of tactics to be played here in this session. Maybe you want to find a bit of another car on the track because it can certainly pull you along. The straights here at Le Mans, as we know, are massive. So getting in someone's wake for those is certainly beneficial.
Yeah, it's going to be big around here. This circuit's been in existence since 1921, and it's had a lot of changes made over the years to it, but it still preserves its incredibly fast nature. Driving here is all about minimizing downforce, minimizing drag as well, and making sure that you're able to hit the maximum speed down these very long straight line sections. LMP1s will be going at over 330 kilometers an hour down to the Mulsanne chicanes. And it's going to be interesting seeing how the LMP1s tackle this, because the drivers do have an extra thing to deal with compared to other cars that race in this style of racing. LMP1s having hybrid engines. They've got electric motors supplementing their gasoline or diesel engines, and you have to manage the regeneration of that through the brakes over the course of the lap. You've got to make sure that you don't run out of available charge before you cross the line. You've got to make maximum use of it.
Yeah, certainly, and there's a lot of buttons on these LMP1 cars, isn't there? Yeah. I mean, I've never actually attempted to drive one because the prospect of all those buttons just seems a bit of too much of a daunting task, especially when you throw in the fact that you're trying to manage all that stuff when you're racing other people at speeds in excess of 300 kilometers an hour at the end of these straights. It's a mammoth task they have ahead of them.
Yep, certainly is, and we should be going green for this Hyperpole session very, very shortly. But coming into this round, this is the halfway point of the Majors Series for 2020. We started on the 12th of January for the Daytona 2.4, and it's been quite the championship since then. We've had 4 oval races in the midst of a variety of road events as well. A championship that really tests the mettle of drivers and their versatility through different types of racing. We have seen Kinetic, the team that has generally been the team to beat in the international division of the majors. We've seen them have a slightly patchy performance this season, but still one of the strongest teams out there. They've got drivers in this Hyperpole session.
Just listening, Reese, to the driver's briefing in the background here. It's, so the LMP1s will roll off first for this session. LMP2s will roll off second. GTEs will be released third of all. There won't be a massive gap between them, but just enough to separate the classes from each other. They've got about 25 minutes, of course, to find themselves a nice clean spot on the track. Although 13 kilometers long, you don't get that many laps in. 25 minutes will go by very quickly here.
Yeah, you're only going to be able to get 7 or 8 laps, if that, to set your pole time. So it's not going to be the easiest session to navigate for drivers, especially like Daniel Stevens. He says Hyperpole will be interesting on board. No idea how to use all the buttons. Daniel is one of many drivers tonight that we have webcam feeds for. We've got Cameron Dance, Simon Mazzomo, Jonathan Ben, Daniel Stevens, of course, and Shane Bowen, all on webcam tonight. So we'll get a very good view for how these drivers tackle this circuit in their sim rigs.
So we always see Cameron Dance leaning into the corners. Now, I wonder if he ducks down in his seat like I do in a kart down the straight to try and get more speed.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see for that one. He's already sitting pretty low in his hyperstimulator chassis there, but certainly a little bit of extra squeeze room.
Never going to get over that name.
No, never. Well, driver's briefing still ongoing, and we'll be getting ready to go very shortly. What's going on, Ryan?
There are no resets in this session.
Oh. So you have to come back into the pits to get more fuel and a fresh set of rubber.
And if you crash,
you're
bye-bye.
done. You're absolutely done. So that just increases the challenge of this session for these drivers. And hearing engines fire up in the pits, we're getting ready to go very shortly. The first driver out on track who's going to be released is Eric Thorpe in the number 1 Audi. He's sitting currently at the end of pit lane. Just waiting for the all clear from race control to get this session started. Eric Thorpe for Swift Racing. He's been a driver that we've seen pop up many times in the majors. He's had some good results, but hasn't appeared consistently over the course of this championship. This is one of the few times we're seeing Eric Thorpe this season. So he's in a car that he likes. Hopefully he's successful at it.
There's a few drivers we haven't seen this season that are entering. We've got a 55-car field once we get into the race proper in just over a half an hour's time. So, going to be very interesting to see how they mix in throughout the field. Someone like Jackson Susan Harlow, I saw his name on the entry list. So, that's a driver that could very easily challenge the normal front runners of the field. As we see our first car out on track. That's the number 1 Audi that you mentioned for Kinetic Racing.
Yes, indeed, making his way through the S's. Coming up to Tetra Rouge, which is the entry point to the Mulsanne Straight. This turn is much faster than it used to be. It used to just be a right angle corner onto this straight line section of highway. This is a public road in France that is closed off for the 24 hours of Le Mans every year.
Does it
Carries,
have a speed limit?
I believe it does, of 100 kilometers an hour. It is annoying, but the speed limit is taken off for the racers, so it's it's all well and good for these guys. And that first chicane, you've got to brake a little bit earlier than you think for that one. It comes up on you quite quickly, and a lot of turns around here. Due to the public road nature, especially here down the middle of the straight, you notice the crown in the road. Eric has to be very careful how he moves his car over from one side of the circuit to the other, because that crown can pull the car in both directions.
Indeed it can, and you often see when cars go side by side, they're on one extreme of the track and the other down there. They won't drive down the very middle of it to avoid that little crown in the road. They've been released very far apart from each other, in fact, each individual car. The next car on track, Mizomo, is only just going through that second chicane now, so massive gaps in the field. in your LMP1 category. LMP2s are only just making their way towards the Mulsanne straight now.
Yeah, all 4 of our LMP1 runners are out. Or 5, sorry. It's Mazomo, Thorpe, Stadler, Stevens, and O'Leary, all driving LMP1s. And Mazomo here, driving in the Porsche, which is an interesting choice. You can go for the Audi R18 or the Porsche 919 in the LMP1 class. The Porsche and Audi have differences in how they produce their electrical power. Both of them recover electrical energy from under the brakes, but the Porsche has the added element of being able to regenerate electric energy through the turbo as the car is accelerating. You can't do that in the Audi. In the Audi, you can only regenerate under the brakes, so you have to be a bit more careful about how you use the extra power.
Well, you learn something new every day, don't you? So how does that affect the drive then out on the track race?
Out on track, it basically means that in the Audi, you have to really monitor your electricity levels because they're going to stay at the same level down the straights. But in the Porsche, like what Mr. Stevens is driving, he will notice his available energy bar go up and up and up gradually, give him a little bit of an extra boost down the straight. The Porsche does have a bit less charge capacity than the Audi, I believe, so it equals out more or less in a race session, but the Porsche should be faster down the straights.
Faster seems like such a relative term in excess of 350 kilometers an hour.
It does, but believe me, it can make a difference, however small, in a qualifying session. So Eric Thorpe's already started his first lap and making his way very cleanly through the S's to start things off. The Audi with a diesel engine, V6 twin turbo. Audi's predecessor to this car, the R18, was the first diesel-engined car, or the R10, sorry, was the first diesel-engined car to win the 24 Hours of Le Mans, and Audi had committed to that diesel fuel philosophy for the rest of their time in global sports car racing, reaching some very high speeds down the first part of the Mulsanne Straight and keeping it nice and clean through the chicane as well. They've got to be careful about how they navigate these chicanes, because this track is pretty lenient in terms of off-track incidents that iRacing automatically assigns when you leave the circuit, but you do have to be careful not to use too much of those curbs.
Yeah, certainly pick up an off-track. Incident limits shouldn't be too much of a factor on this one. Well, obviously not in qualifying, but in the race a little bit later on. Definitely going to have to keep that in mind. Over the course of 2.4 hours, very easy to pick up an off-track here and there on each lap, and it'll accumulate pretty quickly. Now, interesting, you see Eric Thorpe already coming up onto the back of one of the last GTEs that was released, Thomas O'Leary.
Yeah, that will be interesting, but it looks like they've timed it very well. Thorpe has come up on the straight between Mulsanne and Indianapolis, and he's just going to jet on by Mr. O'Leary, so no trouble there. It's really places like the braking zones into the chicanes and coming through the Porsche curves up towards the end of the lap that traffic is going to be an issue. The next GTE looks like is a fair way away, so Eric Thorpe should have a nice clear run to the line on this lap.
That corner is very difficult because if you overshoot it, you see there how the tire bundle runs in towards the racetrack. The runoff area very quickly dissipates, and incredibly easy to make a mistake and hit that bundle, especially if you're side by side with someone. If you're stuck on the outside, you've got to be extremely cautious there. So that could be one of the danger zones of the race today. As that looked like it was very tight in the fence.
That too. That's another place that drivers are going to have to watch out. The opening section of the Porsche curves. He brings it back onto the circuit to avoid triggering the slowdown, does Eric Thorpe. That wall right in the middle of the Porsche curves is going to be quite interesting. You don't want to run side by side through there either. How is Eric Thorpe going to tackle the Ford chicane? It's a clean run through there, and it looks like this is going to be a 3-minute 18.4 first LMP1 time of the night, and that's looking quite competitive.
It does. We'll see how it stacks up, though. Of course, weather conditions may make the track a little bit cooler, as Simon Mizomo looks like he's going to be about a couple seconds off here after his first attempt, up and over the curbs, using all the sausage curve there. Gonna record a 3:24, so he's 6 seconds off Eric Thorpe.
Oh, actually, that lap time didn't end up counting, Ryan. He got an off track at some point on that lap. So,
might explain the 6 seconds.
yeah, maybe. Either way, Simon Mizomo is going to have to make another attempt at a time. Have a look at Dean Moll, though. 2 seconds, 1.6 behind Eric Thorpe in his opening campaign. What about Harold Stadler then? Teammate to the reigning champion, Cameron Dance, coming out of the final chicane. This is going to be slower than Thorpe as well, but with a 3-minute 20.2, that puts him into third place, 2/10 behind Moll. And 2/10 around a track like Le Mans is it's time that just adds up incrementally over the entire course of a lap. And Daniel Stevens there with a 3:19.8, putting himself into second. That's a good time in the Porsche.
Indeed, it is interesting. Will Leslie's brought it down to pit road after at the end of his first flying lap. Not sure what the story is there. Damon Stockton should be the first driver to record a time in the LMP2 category. So these guys are about 15 plus seconds off the LMP1s. As he comes through the final chicane here, race looks like something in the range of about a 3:32.
Yeah, looks like something to that effect, which is a reasonable time in the HPD. 3.5 minutes. The HPD ARX01C is pretty vintage LMP2 car now. It raced back in the 2010-2011 period, and it's a bit of a dying breed. Open top prototypes, you don't see them anymore, as John King sets a 3-minute 38, so he's going to have to make up 5 seconds on Stockton, which is no easy feat, and Shane Bowen needs to bring it in for another go as well.
John King's lap didn't register either, so he picks up an off-track somewhere out there. Watching Eric Thorpe again into that tricky corner I highlighted earlier. He runs wide, and what did he hit?
I think it might be the transition between the gravel and the tarmac hitting the splitter of the car. We'll get a modem simulation replay of that just to dissect what went on. And this corner, Arnage, one of the most difficult. He locked his brakes over the curb, and then when he hit the gravel, the car just went straight on. That is the pitfall in these high downforce, very low ride height LMP1 cars.
Someone that won't have that issue if they run over that same piece of track is Jackson Susan Harlow here in the Alta C Sports Porsche. Expect him to really challenge the status quo of the guys like Cameron Dance, Thomas O'Leary in this, not only this session, but the race.
I would agree. Jackson, an incredibly fast driver, no matter what he gets behind the wheel of. Driving the Porsche 911 RSR for this particular occasion. It's interesting to see that, Wayne Taylor and Thomas O'Leary are the only other GTE cars out on track at the moment. Cameron Dance should be joining them at some point, but he's elected not to go out just yet. Drivers being released incrementally. It seems like Cameron Dance is unable to load in. It looks like he's just entered the server, actually, so we'll be able to see Cameron Dance out on track very soon. But as we continue to watch Jackson Suslin Harlow, he's coming up to a very particular section of the track, the Porsche curves, and this is a place where the aero of the LMP1 cars really comes into its own, but you get no such pleasure in the GTEs.
I mean, in theory, his car should be very good through here.
In theory. It looks like it, too. Very grippy. Low to the ground, level through the corners, not seeing much body roll at all. Very controlled lap from Jackson Suslin Harlow here. So the times that he's got to work with at the moment, Thomas O'Leary on a 3:48.9, I get the feeling that this is going to absolutely smash that as he comes through the Ford chicane for the first time on a flying lap, monstering the curbs there, two-wheeling it over the Ford chicane, and a 3-minute 46.8 for Jackson Suslin Harlow, and he takes provisional GTE pole. We'll have to wait and see what Cameron can do in response.
Or, in fact, Taylor Damon Stockton looking to improve the 5-second margin he already has. Yeah, for DPR Racing in the LMP2 class. As he comes through that last chicane, keeps it off that curb nicely. Going to record a 3-minute 32.617, and that's going to be an improvement. That puts it to 5.6 seconds now.
Very good gap there for Damon Stockton. Very clean lap too. John King still has to put a time on the board. His first attempt was invalidated. Looks like he might have just made his way to the end of this. It's a 3-minute 33.9 for him, and only a small gap between himself and Stockton, putting himself into second for LMP2. What about Dwayne Burns as well? He's going to set his first time. This is looking like a 3-minute 34 for him. That's going to put him in third provisionally for LMP2. It's looking pretty close between Stockton, King, and Burns. Wayne Taylor putting himself into third in GTE on a 3-minute 52. We've still got to wait for Shane Bowen to get a competitive time in LMP2 as well. We've got time streaming in.
Loving how close LMP1 looks here between these top 5 drivers. Obviously, being such a long track, your margins are amplified, so where you'd normally see a tenth or two between the field, somewhere like Suzuka is the first track that comes to mind, it's going to be out there towards the second, just because it's so long, and there's so many areas where you can make a mistake. To get a perfect lap at Le Mans is extremely difficult, near on verging towards impossible.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I've had many attempts, and I've yet to call one truly successful. But Simon Mazzomo looks very happy with that time, but it's only... yeah, I misinterpreted the expression there. He only just missed out on improving. Only a small gap between that time and his fastest of a 3:19.37. So Harold Stadler then, see if he can improve on his third place. He's got half a second to make up if he wants to pit Mazzomo.
Those final 2 chicanes must be so troublesome as a driver, because this track as a whole is incredibly high speed. It's a 3:19.191. He will go to second, puts top 3 under a second now between them. It's such a high-speed track, and when you get to the final little sector, or mini sector, and you're almost there, but then you've got to slow the car up as much as you've slowed it up all lap long, pretty much.
Yeah, it is one of the slower feeling points on the circuit. Eric Thorpe comes across the line and does not set a competitive time, but Dean Moll, absolutely pounding across the curbs. I wonder if that gave him an off track. It looks like it has. He slowed that one up. Meanwhile, Damon Stockton, and this is quite the onboard coming through the Porsche curves. The speed and the downforce that the LMP2 cars are dealing with, not as much as the LMP1s, but they are lighter and slightly less powerful as well. So you can really chuck this HPD around as you see him.
You can see that sun glaring down as well, just the right-hand side of the screen a moment ago. There are some points on the racetrack where that is blinding to the drivers. So that could be a factor too, as the sun goes ever lower in the sky. John King coming towards the last part of his lap, using all the racetrack there. That would have been very close to an off-track. He would have just got there, though. He needs to find an improvement of just over a second if he wants to challenge Stockton for pole here. He's only going to have another attempt or 2 at it as well, with 7 minutes left on the clock. Out of the final corner, what's it going to be for John King? A 3:33.309. Not going to be fast enough. He improves by 0.6.
Yeah, and that's a pretty good margin to gain around Le Mans. A productive gain for John King in terms of time, but he still has to make up 0.7 if he wants to get pole from Damon Stockton. And Dwayne Burns setting 3:34.061, remaining there in 4th place. Let's check in with Cameron Dance. Meanwhile, he's brought his Ferrari 488 GTE out onto the track, and he is exploring every single section of the circuit and then some on his preparations.
Driving one-handed.
Yeah, all right. It's taken some inspiration from me then.
Indeed he has. 2 hands.
Play like you're first, practice like you're in second, Jay says.
What?
It's his t-shirt that Cameron
Oh.
Dance has. Okay, right. A little bit small on my end, but I'm sure everyone on the broadcast can see it. There it is. Play like you're first, practice like you're in second. I like that.
Taking that
Good
sentence out of
philosophy.
context.
Yeah. Oh, well, Cameron Dance is still on an out lap at the moment, and he's going to be pulling over and letting by faster cars who are on laps, one of them being Simon Mazomo, who has not set a competitive time on that occasion. He's missing out on about 30 seconds there. What about Thorpe? It's looking like a... Oh, don't know how quickly this lap is going to come to an end, because the rate at knots that these LMP1s go, you think, oh, it's going to be a slow lap time, but they end up completing the final part of the lap so quickly.
Yeah, they really do. Here we go through the chicane. It's going to be so pinpoint accurate as you throw it in there with as much speed as you can. Try not to take too much of that last little sausage curve because it can really hurt you up to the run to the line. It's a 3:18.935. It's half a second slower than his previous best, so he will remain 3/4 clear out at the front of the field. Only driver in the session yet to the lap time is Cameron Dance, but he's going to have enough time to set it as long as he gets the line and doesn't make a mistake on his lap. Thomas O'Leary, a 3:49.344. That will not improve his lap, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's about a second off what he originally set. So Jackson Suzlin-Harlow is currently on pole for GTE, 3-minute 46.887, and you see down there on the left-hand side of your screen 1.5 seconds that Thomas O'Leary would have to make up if he wants that pole position. Cameron Dance, meanwhile, has begun his lap as we take a look at Daniel Stevens' attempt at getting through the Porsche curves. It all happens so quickly in these LMP1s. They are the fastest closed-wheel racing cars in the world. You see the amount of jostling at the wheel that Daniel Stevens is having to deal with as well. These cars having four-wheel drive under acceleration, a lot of that electrical power going through the front wheels. 3:19.953 for Daniel Stevens. That's only a tenth off what his best time is.
We're missing two drivers from the GTE category in the session too. Mirko Dornak and Jack Stiles haven't taken to it. Stiles won't be running in the race, unfortunately. He's not been able to make it. It looks like everyone else who was slated to be in the Hyperpole session has made it in, though.
Yeah, looks like it. And Will Leslie setting a 3-minute 31.2. He's just taken pole position in the LMP2 class with a very nice gap over Damon Stockton of 1.3 seconds. So Will Leslie looking very good for this one.
Harlow has a 2-second gap over Thomas O'Leary at the moment. That's a pretty impressive margin. Cameron Dance, though, might have something to say about it. He's about halfway or a quarter of the way through his first flying lap, and his only flying lap it will be as well. So a little bit later on, we'll check in with him and see whether he can improve. Shane Bowen trying to improve from the back of the Hyperpole group for LMP2. Finds an improvement up to 9th overall and 4th in class.
Yeah, into the 332s, only a tenth off his teammate, Dwayne Burns. So it's a good run from Bowen and looking very consistent for the Avatar Auto Racing team. Meanwhile, Simon Mazomo across the line once more to begin his final lap. He's only got one chance left. It's going to be checkered flag when they come to the line, taking a lot of curb in the first part of the circuit. Eric Thorpe, meanwhile, can he improve on his 3:18.4? He knows that he's under threat. He knows that Simon Mazomo is still out there and can gain a second. He's just got to keep it smooth.
Nope, he's aborted the lap.
No.
He's got to slow down. So he's got to try again here.
So this is going to be Eric Thorpe's final attempt at a time here. He'll have to hope that he's got enough charge in the battery. What about Dean Mole?
1.6 back at the moment. He'll be hoping to find a bit of an improvement over there, considering how fast his teammates are at the moment. It's a 3:19.082. That puts him to second.
Good stuff from Dean Moll in the dying minutes of the session. What about his teammate at Kinetic, Thomas O'Leary, the first GTE driver to set a time, currently sitting in second place. 3:32.6 is the time that he has to go faster than in order to improve on his time. It looks like a 3:49 at the end of all of that for Thomas O'Leary. And I was completely reading the wrong section of times there. Cameron Dance's first time across the line, 3:47.923. It's not a patch on Harlow's so far, but a good opening run.
He will get another lap in. Excuse me, I said earlier he wouldn't, but he does get there with a minute to go. Daniel Stevens, he will stay 5th after that lap. Will Leslie, Kinetic Casuals. Nothing casual at that lap time, though. He's at 1 second over everyone else at the moment. Trying to find yet another improvement.
Looks like a nice smooth run through the Ford chicanes, but it's all gone wrong right at the end for Will Leslie. Commentator's curse right there for Will Leslie. Damon Stockton, meanwhile, setting 3:31.728 to consolidate his second place in the dying seconds of the session. So a shame for Will Leslie, but it looks like he's done enough to secure pole as the checkered flag is now out. Drivers still on a lap include Cameron Dance and Simon Mazzomo right here. Oh, there we go. That's his lap over.
Slaps the fence. The damage to the right side of that LMP1 car. Lap done for him. Session done. He will line
Dance
up
is
in
pulled
fourth.
out. Dance is not on track anymore. So it looks like he's going to be starting in second.
Stockton could still nab pole here. He got to the line before the checkered flag flew.
Yeah,
He's
he
got
could.
a whole lap to do, but if he continues to improve...
Mazzomo not looking very happy with himself at all there. He has got fourth place in the bag for the start, but I'll bet he's thinking there was a lot he could have done differently in that session. Eric Thorpe coming up.
Off track.
Yeah, that might be indeed. We'll have to wait and see if Eric Thorpe decides to just pull it into the pits, and he does. Well, he's managed to take pole in LMP1, so he can be very happy with what he has done. Daniel Stevens, we don't know if he's going to be able to challenge for this time. Coming into the hardest corner on the circuit, Indianapolis, coming into Arnage. So quick in these LMP1 cars, you need to be incredibly precise and incredibly brave. And all the way down to the slowest point on the circuit for Arnage, that's where the acceleration of the Porsche really shines. Let's see how Daniel Stevens tackles the Porsche curves then from inside his sim cockpit up into 7th gear and then back down to 5th or 4th it's going to be for the Porsche curves. Down to 4th for Daniel Stevens. Inputs nice and smooth through the fastest corners on the circuit.
He's fighting that wheel, though, isn't he?
He is, definitely.
Got that force feedback cranked, but looks of it.
Oh, he's run wide. He's run wide. That's lap over for Daniel Stevens. So it looks like he is going to stay 5th for the start in the 2.4 hours of Le Mans.
I wonder if anyone's told him he hasn't got his headset on.
Yeah, he's got surround sound, apparently. I remember watching him first time we had him on webcam. I think it was back at Charlotte. And I was wondering why he didn't have his headphones on. He must have been very in tune with the behavior of his car. But no, if he has surround sound, then fair enough. So Damon Stockton then is going to be the final driver to set a time in this session. Can he beat Will Leslie to pole position? He had 5/10 to make up, but oh no, it's all gone wrong for him in the Porsche curves. Car unsettled, and he's pulled out of it. So it looks like that's the order finally confirmed there, Ryan. Eric Thorpe, Will Leslie, and Jackson Suzlin Harlow are your pole sitters in all three classes.
Yep. And those 14 drivers will grid up alongside 40-odd other drivers, making it about a 55-car field in about 15 minutes' time for the start of the 2.4 hours of Le Mans here at the famed Circuit de la Sarthe.
It's going to be a very fun one. We're here on SimSpeed TV. Now that this is one and done, we're going to go on a very quick break here on the iRacing Esports Network, but do not go away. We're coming back in just a few minutes to bring you the green flag in the 2.4 hours of Le Mans.
Coming up to the line, being chased, and it was Braden Johnson. Unbelievable finish. It was 1/1000th of a second between them.
Green flag in the air. We are racing in the 2020 24 Hours of Daytona.
They go door to door for the feature race lead here on the last lap of the race. Side by side for the race.
race lead in the final corner at Homestead. Down the back straightaway, 3 wide again for the race lead. This is unbelievable stuff here tonight.
Aloma is going to have to be very deep on the brakes, and he is very deep on the brakes. It's side by side through the corner. This is for the win.
It'll be side by side. Davies low, Ottinger high. To the very inside is Garrett low. 4 wide at the stripe.
For all his work here on this outside line, neck and neck. Who's going to back out? Does anyone back out? Verstappen starts to squeeze on the inside, and now he'll try and straight line it. Goes under the apron, drag race to the line. It's so close to call.
iRacing, you wanted the best, you got him 4 abreast. Often imitated, never duplicated. The greatest show on dirt, the world of outlaw.
Fantastic. This is GT racing right now.
He's got traction, he's got really outside of both of them. Maloney!
Oh, he's taking Anderson. Anderson's up to him.
Oh my God! Big crash! Oh my goodness, half the field's gonna get rolled.
Second very close. These guys are want to make their way through the field very quickly. Oh, here we go. Oh no! That's massive. This is it. This is over. I can't believe this. Oh my God!
God, what?
We're back here on the iRacing Esports Network. This is SimSpeed TV. You're watching round 7 of the International Division of the Majors series, the 2.4 hours of Le Mans. We just had the Hyperpole session where we've seen pole position decided in every single class, but now there is the lull before the storm. The green flag is going to be flying very shortly, but we're going to take a couple of minutes to talk about the charity that is being supported by this particular round of the majors. This round is supporting Fight Colorectal Cancer, and it is Cameron Dance's choice of charity for this event in tribute to his dad who passed away last year. And the charities have been a big part of the majors from the very start, just about every round being run in support of a charity. And Ryan, this particular charity, very important to get on board with.
Yes, indeed. And good thing about the Majors series is, we're supporting a different charity each and every round, which is fantastic to bring light to a bunch of different charities across the different regions that Majors runs in, of course, America, international and European, and supporting those charities that at some point, a lot of people are affected by them.
Yeah, exactly. We've seen support for veterans charities among other things as well, but Fight CRC is what we are supporting for this one, and indeed we should fight it because any form of cancer is something that that takes away a lot from people, and the research and the push for a cure is incredibly important. So if you can, be sure to support Fight CRC as part of this round of the Majors series. The session is now live, and we are going to jump straight in and see how things go, because this is going to be a very interesting 2 hours and 24 minutes with almost 50 cars out there on the circuit. There's going to be quite a bit of jostling in the first couple of laps, isn't there?
Yeah, going to be a wild opening lap or two before everyone sorts themselves out. They've got to remember too, though, it's a very long race. They've got to make sure they're not being too aggressive early on. They're going to make sure they settle in and start looking towards their strategy. They're going to have to make a couple pit stops in this one as well, so don't be aggressive. But once that green flag flies, the red mist comes down and anything can happen.
Yeah, exactly right. And you'll see the race go through some ebbs and flows as we go over this 2.5 hour length. Some big racing in the first parts of the stints, then drivers space out and get into a rhythm, and once you come up to lap traffic, it's definitely going to put a few spanners in the works. Multi-class racing has always been a discipline where practice is the most important thing. You know, you have to really regulate your driving in these multi-class sessions. You don't want to go for a banzai overtaking move on a GT into the Mulsanne chicane out of nowhere, because it can very easily ruin both of your races.
Yeah, it can. Of course, they've got a spare car as well. But one of the other things with Le Mans, if you crash out there and you can't make it back to pit lane, you've got to take the tow. The tow time is ridiculously long. So it'll cost you massively. And not going to be any safety cars to bunch them back up either, so...
Yeah, exactly right. It's the main thing to do, keep it on the black stuff, keep it out of the walls, keep it out of the gravel. You just got to take care. That is the main thing in endurance racing.
Endurance racing is one of the toughest forms of racing that there is out there, and because when we get to the end of it, the attrition is going to rise, the fatigue is going to rise for the drivers as well, both mentally and physically. It is incredibly draining.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, you look at Le Mans on a map and you think, oh, you know, there's a ton of straights, plenty of time to rest. No, definitely not. You're dealing with the bumps over the public road section. You're dealing with the curves through the Ford chicanes and down the Mulsanne as well. You're dealing with the walls and the Porsche curves. Every part of this track can rise up and screw you over at some point, which is why you need to be on your guard all the time. Well, the drivers are in their 10-minute warm-up session at the moment, and we have a full complement of cars for this 7th round of the Majors series, and we're starting at 8:30 or so in the morning in sim time. So we're not going to be seeing any nighttime shenanigans in this one. It's all going to be in broad daylight.
Yep, so that's going to be very helpful for the drivers, because obviously when the nighttime descends over Le Mans, it does not have any lights other than the main straight, so to speak. So you normally rely mainly on your headlights primarily and only on your headlights, but under the daytime skies, they'll be able to see quite a way off into the distance, which will be a nice change, I'm sure, for a drivers doing an endurance race at the Circuit de la Sarthe.
Yeah, exactly. Be looking forward to how to who was going to see the furthest in these daytime conditions, because, you know, you can see a lot in the daytime, but a lot of the corners around Le Mans are blind. You can't get in too much of a rhythm. You've always got to stay alert, keep on your toes, because you can round a corner like Mulsanne that Jackson Suzlin-Harlow is making his way towards at the moment. You come around that corner and you could see a car spun on the exit and you have nothing you can do to avoid it.
The 50 drivers too, that risk is amplified as well. Even if you're the leader of the race, eventually, with 55 cars, you're going to start to catch packs of drivers, not just single drivers. And you're going to end up with, 3 classes in one spot on the racetrack, and that's where the disaster really starts to become a very real risk, because, obviously the GTEs are not exactly slow, but in terms of LMP1, they're like a moving chicane from the car to get around. And the LMP2 car just makes it very much of a nuisance as well, because they can hold their own for a slight little moment as well with both classes.
Yeah, they certainly can. If you're an LMP1 and you're coming up on both an LMP2 and a GT at the same time, well, you have to slow down for the GT, but the LMP2 is going to be a little harder to pass. You basically, in the LMP1s, have to boost your way out of the corners in order to clear cars right on corner exit. You don't want to be making too many moves, outbraking into corners. You want to stay nice and consistent, keep your charge up, and use it when it's needed to get by people.
Yeah, it's like the DRS almost. They can try to save it up over the course of a lap to try and use it when they want to make an overtake, but not quite as powerful. But definitely something that the LMP1 drivers can use to manufacture a pass on another driver that maybe they can't quite find a way by. Although overtaking at Le Mans is not regarded as difficult with the length of those straights. The slipstream is going to make things relatively easy for them, but it goes the other way. If you pass someone in the first half of the Mulsanne straight, they can, slipstream right back by on the second half of it.
Yeah, certainly can, and we might see that happen a couple of times, especially on the last lap when LMP1 drivers are very desperately trying to boost as much as they can towards the finish while preserving enough battery to stay competitive. We'll have to wait and see. But we'll see quite a few names in this session that we haven't seen in quite some time. And Shane Bowen qualifying in the top 5 in LMP2, showing how to make your way past a GT under acceleration in the LMP2. Racing in his garage is Shane Bowen with a VR headset to boot. And at the very least, he has a very nice view of everything that's around him in that open cockpit. Well, Mr. Bowen certainly has a lot to work for in this one. He's qualified alongside his teammate Dwayne Burns, so Avatar Auto Racing, one of the stalwart teams of the international division of the Majors Series, definitely looking to get themselves up there and get a good result, because they've certainly been knocking on the door in the past. Well, the session has ticked over then to race, and we will be able to side him for Kinetic. Harold Stadler for TechSense Fitstein Motorsport in third place alongside his teammate Simon Mazzomo. Daniel Stevens and Robert Northway make up the third row in LMP1, and Matt Andrews is the final and 7th of our LMP1 machines. Then we get to pole position for LMP2, which is Will Leslie. Damon Stockton and Dwayne Burns down behind him, along with Shane Bowen and John King, rounding out the top 5. Matthias Magnussen just behind, with Michael Skurlock alongside. Newton and Otto as well. Looking forward to seeing what Scott Newton can do. He is successful in downforce cars, which the LMP2 definitely is. Phil Otto alongside him. Martin Houston and Pierre Cousin lining up 10th and 11th, with Dave Trevethan and Aaron Pascoe 12th and 13th. We've still got a few more LMP2s to go. Stephen Williams, Peter Matson and Colin Herman completing your prototype field. And then we move into the vast GTE class. Jackson Suzlin Harlow's taken pole in that class. Cameron Dance lining up in second with Thomas O'Leary in third. Wayne Taylor and Philip Morton behind them, with Alex Court and Johnny Bell rounding out the first 7 positions in GTE. Matt Clote and Jamie Kingscott in 9th, and Jonathan Ben rounding out the top 10 in the GT class. Adam Richards, Gavin Barber, Jin Huang, Giovanni Pafisi, and Bradley Matheson completing the top 15, with our 16th and final GTE being Jack Alessi. There's a huge amount of cars in this session, 39 machines taking the start here at Le Mans, and they are making their way through the Porsche curves now behind the pace car as we gear up for this start. Certainly look.
Because those guys are going to struggle to get away from each other throughout the course of this one.
They certainly will. Well, it's a kinetic 1-2 up at the top of LMP1, Thorpe and Mole in those 2 blue Audis. And they've got a double-pronged attack from Fitzstye behind in the form of Stadler and Mazzomo. Be interesting to see how these 2 teams match up against each other. And Cameron Dance, interesting to see. He's all the way down at the very back of the GTE grid. It looks like he was late getting to the start. He'll have to assume his position quick smart before they get to the green flag. Looks like he is managing to do that. And we're about to take a start in our LMP1 class. Eric Thorpe is going to lead them away at the green flag, the acceleration point just after the exit of the Ford chicane. The French flag in the sky as the green flag flies for the 2.4 hours of Le Mans, and it is Eric Thorpe first across the line, with Dean Mole alongside, with Simon Mazzomo and Harold Stadler going side by side coming into the first corner. Mazzomo is going to take Stadler round the outside, get himself up in a 3rd position. That's a problem for Eric Thorpe. He's locked his brakes right at the first chicane and gone off the circuit. He's going to have a massive slowdown to deal with, and everyone is going to have to go by him. This is not the way the race should have started for Eric. Problems for Damon Stockton as well. Running off. Oh, the problems have continued for Eric Thorpe. He's tumbling over. He's actually had a huge incident. Robert Northway making contact with him. So our pole sitter is out. We're going to get a modem simulation replay of that. Eric Thorpe coming through the S's, still recovering from his initial mistake at the start. And there's Robert Northway coming around the outside. They come together on the exit, and Thorpe has just fired into the wall. And his car completely destroyed out of that one.
Shocking start for Skull. He was getting bumps before the start even, before they even took to the start-finish line, and then obviously spun it down at the first corner. Here's a move for the lead of GTE. O'Leary pulling to the outside of Harlow. Going to be a test for the late breakers. Harlow on the inside prevails, but O'Leary already starting to chat.
Yeah, definitely is. Harlow looked very fast off the start, but O'Leary putting on the pressure in race conditions. They've got an LMP2 to deal with coming through. That's Michael Skurlock in the number 350. He makes his way past them nicely. They're drawing side by side again behind, though. Thomas O'Leary, though, he's remained on the outside for these chicanes. Harlow has put on a great defensive drive here so far, keeping to that inside line, making sure that O'Leary does not get a look in, but he's compromising his exits, which is allowing O'Leary to get back up to him.
Yeah, well, defending on lap 1 of many laps today, but he knows that if he can stay ahead of him through these high-speed sections, he may be able to pull a gap through the final sector and then break free of the slipstream that O'Leary's in. So this is important for Harlow to hold on to the spot now, because he could be able to break free after.
Yeah, just squirrely on the throttle on these cold tyres. O'Leary still in the slipstream down the back stretch up towards Indianapolis. This straight isn't really a straight at all. It has 2 right-hand kinks in it. As they go through the trees, O'Leary now onto the bumper of Harlow, and having a look up the inside at Indianapolis. That's brave, but he elects to back out of it. Harlow keeping the lead of our GTE class. An update from our other classes, meanwhile, Will Leslie has rocketed away in the lead of LMP2. Damon Stockton a very long way behind him, and Simon Mazzomo is the one who has taken the lead of LMP1 at the end of this. Kinetic are one man down with Eric Thorpe's incident right at the start of lap 1. So now Fitzsty has their grasp on this, and it's a slowdown for Dean Mole out of the final chicane. So it goes from bad to worse for Kinetic, and it is now a Fitzsty 1-2.
Really rough start for them. They'll bounce back though. They're a very strong team, aren't they? They're one of the strongest teams in the major series across every single region. So don't expect them to continue to fade. Expect that fortune to turn around before we get too much further into this one. On board with one of the Kinetic drivers, O'Leary, who is still challenging Harlow. Harlow hasn't been able to pull away from him. He's still right there in his slipstream. And these two could be very close on pace. And if they are, they're going to be stuck in battle all race long.
Yeah, they certainly are. Harlow will want to try and break this slipstream as soon as he can, but he's going to have a very rough time of it. Oh no, I've just seen a problem for Harold Stadler. He's gotten a slowdown out of Tete Rouge. Big slowdown. He's let Dean Mole back by him, and it looks like he could come under trouble here from Robert Northway and Daniel Stevens. Well, he's managed to keep them behind him coming into the first Mulsanne chicane, but that's not going to be good for Harold Stadler, losing some valuable time out of that. Remember, no safety cars, so any time you lose, you have to gain back through any means necessary. But this fight between Northway and Stevens is looking quite interesting. Stevens, with the superior speed of the Porsche, the extra boost, managing to put himself up the inside into the second Mulsanne chicane and make his way through. Very nicely done. There's not going to be much of a response there from Robert Northway, unfortunately. Stevens just streaking away. He is now using Harold Stadler for a slipstream.
Yes, Stadler now might be under pressure as a result of that mistake, because he's now well and truly giving a tow to the cars behind.
Have a look at how aggressive Stevens is on the brakes, drawing right up to the back of Stadler. It's interesting, in the LMP1s, you've really got to be careful with your braking input in them because, yes, they regain energy from the brakes. It's a bit extra boost from Daniel Stevens. He's going to sweep on by Harold Stadler down the straight. Stadler with no charge, and that slowdown would have really hurt him, remember. The Porsche regenerates through the turbo, so you need to be accelerating. He was coasting down the majority of the first part of the Mulsanne straight, so no extra charge for him. Oh, hang on a minute. He's coming straight back at Arnage. You don't see people firing one up the inside there normally. I feel like it might not work out too well for Stadler because Stevens now has the inside.
That was a great exchange there. Now they're going to run side by side again. Looks like Stevens is going to back out of it and tuck in behind him here, and he does. Almost.
I think he's still going for it.
Yeah.
Oh, maintains the inside, but Stadler sweeping around the outside of him. You saw it in Daniel Stevens' monitors there. Those are the close quarters that these guys are racing in. So some very interesting times up at the top of our LMP1 class. It is on for third. Simon Mazzomo still leads. Meanwhile, it's a slowdown, apparently, for Jackson Suzlin Harlow. Thomas O'Leary now leads our GTE class, and he's coming under pressure from Cameron Dance.
Already, the story of the race is the slowdowns. So many people are getting them at the front of the classes because it's incredibly harsher at Le Mans. It's very easy to get them. You run too close on the inside of the curbs and they ping you for a couple seconds each time.
Yeah, it's something that you really need to watch out for in this style of racing. Well, Jackson definitely had the one lap pace, but now he's a few seconds back from O'Leary. He'll have to work pretty hard to get up into the 1 second range so he can get the slipstream back. Meanwhile, seeing a battle in LMP2 for second place, Dwayne Burns and Matthias Magnussen are fighting very hard for P2. Will Leslie still leads your LMP2 class, but Mr. Burns has managed to put himself up into second place in the midst of all of this, with Magnussen making a good run as well, up 4 positions from where he started overall, it's more likely to be 3 in terms of class, because we've got to take into account Eric Thorpe retiring on lap 1. But this is an interesting way to view how Slipstream works down the straights here. It's a very slow gain from Matthias Magnussen, but it's very consistent as well. He's not going to be able to draw alongside coming into the chicane, but he's definitely within attacking range now.
He is. Second half of the Mulsanne straight here. He should be able to pull up to him. Of course, that chicane didn't always used to be there, did it?
No.
You go all the way
1991 they were
down
put in.
Mulsanne straight, and then 1991 it was put in to help slow the cars down. But they're still reaching their incredibly high speeds. The Slipstream LMP2 car isn't as powerful as the other two classes, is it?
Yeah, not quite. It's the advantage in a Slipstream has been reduced over the years. It used to be that it was quite powerful, but nowadays it's something that... Oh, hang on a minute. Have a look at JSH. He's managed to get himself back by Thomas O'Leary in just half a lap. What happened to O'Leary, I wonder? He must have had a slowdown. Seems to be the story, as we've said, Ryan.
Indeed it does. Magnussen, oh, look how close he gets to the back of Burns there in the braking zone, but again, still not close enough, and Burns is able to draw away on the exit of the corner and pull out a gap that should be big enough to leave him still ahead by the time they reach the next braking zone.
Yeah, he's got a gap in hand, has Burns. He doesn't have to worry too much about Magnussen at this point. It's down on the Mulsanne chicanes that he needs to watch out, and he has to make sure that he gets excellent exits from every corner he can. You see Magnussen really drawing up to him, coming through the slower stuff. The exit of Arnage looks like Burns has been able to get the power down very nicely once again. It's difficult in the HPD because it does have traction control like the LMP1s and GTEs do, but you still have to be very smooth on the power in that naturally aspirated Honda V8, following very closely through the Porsche curves as well, so it's very aerodynamically efficient too.
Skurlock is on his charge through the order after the incident before the start, and on the start he's now back up into, I believe, 16th place. He's just found his way by another driver, so he's slowly working his way back forward.
That he is. Michael Skurlock going very hard in the LMP2s, but for this top 3 battle in GTE, it looks like Harlow has gotten over the little wobble he had and has brought himself into the lead. Eric Thorpe is back out on track as well. Our pole sitter. Incident on lap 1 for him. But now he's got a very long race to try and get back. He was out for a few laps, so that amount of time will be very hard to make up for position.
Look at the battle for 14th in LMP2. It's relatively close, in fact, between Martin Houston and Phil Otto, Skurlock, and Dave Treviffin. Aaron Pascoe in there as well. Once these guys get onto the Mulsanne straight, they're all going to close up under the slipstream. Skurlock up inside the top 10 in class now after being at the back.
Oh, look at the run he got. That was an excellent throttle application out of Tete Rouge. He was right on it and got the lunge on Phil Otto before they'd even gotten to the exit. So he's maintaining that run, continuing to maintain it down the straight. I think he would have been happier to have a little bit of an extra slipstream to help him out here, though, because Otto has got a little tiny slipstream from Martin Houston, which is allowing him to go alongside, but Skurlock later on the brakes and gets the move done very nicely.
They were incredibly close in the braking zone there.
They were. A bit too close, I think, for endurance multi-class racing. Give each other a bit more space, guys. But no harm, no foul so far for Michael Skurlock. His next target being Martin Houston. He's going to have to maximize corners in order to get up to the back of him, because down the straight, he's just not in draft range. Another fight in LMP2 that's going on is a bit further up the field, and it's for 4th place. John King is holding off Scott Newton at the moment for 4th place. Newton was one of the drivers that I said to watch out for in the LMP2. He's one of those guys that has a lot of experience in downforce cars, the Apex Racing team driver. So LMP2, right up his alley. John King leading the Legends Championship for drivers over 50, and he certainly has a lot of talent as well, likes the downforce cars too. But Newton gradually starting to draw closer in the slipstream.
Eric Thorpe just put down the fastest lap of the race, a 3-minute 18.359. He's circulating in 7th place, though. He's a long way off anyone else in LMP1, unfortunately.
Yeah, he has yet to pass a car on track, or he has passed one car, which is Peter Matson, the last running LMP2. So, baby steps for Eric Thorpe. And Scott Newton sizing up a move on John King and drawing ever closer down the straight. Not quite maximising his run through the Porsche curves with a little bit of aero push, but he's certainly keeping himself up there and putting the pressure on King quite again, though.
Magnussen got by Burns on this lap as well, by the way.
So that's a change of position for 2nd place in LMP2, and we're hearing that Daniel Stevens is very unhappy on the webcam because, look, he's come in and his car has got pretty heavy damage as he's brought it into the pits. That's going to be a few minutes of repairs, I think, for Daniel. We'll have to go back and see what happened to him. Happened a while ago. It was an incident between himself and another driver. It would have been earlier on in the lap. I've just seen it. The GTE leaders, meanwhile, fighting hard again. And that's Thomas O'Leary with quite the pressure being put under him by Harlow, who pulls out and fires it up the inside into the Porsche curves. Very nice move, but he has to give the room to O'Leary on the inside, side by side. This is going to really help Cameron Dance. O'Leary out on the marbles. He's not going to have a good time there, but slots back in behind Harlow. The top 3 as close as they've ever been in GTE.
That was really tight through the Porsche curves there. That was very close to the wall for Harlow. O'Leary did not give him much room to work with at all. So he will lead this lap. O'Leary will be just in behind him. Cameron Dance looking to improve as well, now in 3rd place.
Yeah, Cameron's drive so far has been very measured, I have to say. He's kept himself out of trouble, not put himself in too much trouble. Harlow, meanwhile, it looks like he's pushing a little too hard as all. Hello. That's some interesting times for LMP2 down the straight. Both making their way past a GTE. That's Magnussen and Burns.
Burns just going to come back at him now after being overtaken last lap. He lifted off there.
Yeah, he did. Interesting. Well, it looks like Burns might be going for a little bit of a fuel-saving strategy here, lifting off at the end of the straight, preserving a few milliliters of fuel. That could definitely help him in the pit stops, because it seems like Magnussen and Burns very similar on pace. They won't be able to get rid of each other by outracing each other.
When can we expect our first pit stops then? They've got varying levels of fuel capacity in these 3 classes, so going to be spread over quite a while, the first pit window.
Yeah, it certainly is. The GTEs have the biggest fuel tanks. LMP1s have the smallest. It's going to be stints of, I think, around 11 or 12 laps for LMP1s, and we'll be coming up to that very shortly, that first pit window. O'Leary and Dance, meanwhile, Harlow, despite being very liberal with track limits earlier on in the lap, has not gotten a slowdown, and he's starting to pull away from these guys. So now the 2 Ferraris forced to fight with each other. O'Leary, a bit of a sitting duck here because he's lost the draft to Harlow now. Dance has it all to himself.
By the way, these guys aren't too far away from being lapped by Mazermo. He's about maybe 20 seconds behind them. He's certainly closer to the back of them than he is to the front of them.
Yeah.
So it's that point where LMP1 starts to catch the slower cars now, the back of the GTE train.
Yes, indeed. And it's a lap time difference of about 30 seconds between the two classes. So Mazomo's going to come up on these guys quick, sharp. Dance in the slipstream of O'Leary, lifting off again. This is a this is very telling for a lot of drivers, electing not to go for that move and just hang back a bit. Look after the tires, look after the fuel. That's endurance racing.
Yeah, certainly is, and it will serve them very well when we get down to the pit stop phase. And they can be stationary for a little bit less time. Maybe extend their stint as well by an extra lap if they can.
Just noticed a problem at turn 1 for Aaron Pascoe. He ran off, so he's lost a couple of positions out of that one. Now in front of Dave Trevethan. And these guys looking very close for 11th and 12th in LMP2. The vast majority of the field, however, has spread out. We're starting to see, particularly in LMP2, drivers starting to assume packs of 2.
Here's another one. Newton and Stockton, they're still glued together. Newton's got by him. Stockton still stalking him in his toe down the Mulsanne straight. He pulls to the inside. He's going to draw alongside and ahead of him down to the chicane, so they switch around again. And in fact, that's Newton and Bowen, is it?
No, it's Newton and Stockton there.
Yeah.
It looks like...
That's just Jay pressing the wrong button again.
It has been a long day for Jay. He's done an awful lot of work in the last few weeks, couple of months for SimSpeed TV. Very busy boy is our director, Jay.
Don't give him credit.
Don't tell me what to do. I outrank you, man.
Do you?
Oh, there we go.
Is it an age thing? Respect your elders.
Yeah, that's it. Meanwhile, a pitter there, Jamie Kingscott in the GTE class. That's a bit of an early stop for GTE, so he might be trying to reverse engineer a couple of aspects of this race. Magnussen and Burns remain glued together for second place, but Burns seems content to just sit behind here for now. It's all about keeping himself in the window to make a move on Magnussen towards the end.
Coming up on 40 minutes into this one, about to hit the 2-hour to go mark here on Le Mans. Not quite 24 hours, but it's a solo driver event. So as we get into the final stint after that last pit stop, that's when the drivers are going to be more prone to making those mistakes, because it's right up there with some of the longer stints you do in the normal 24-hour Le Mans as well.
Yeah, exactly. Drivers in the real life race will often go out for many stints totaling at least 2 hours of driving at a time if you get onto the longer stints. So this is some good practice for these guys, especially for the iRacing official 24 Hours of Le Mans that is happening a little bit later this month. Have a look at Dwayne Burns, very hard on the brakes into the first chicane. Not sure how much that would help him. Got to be careful of the bollards too on the exit, because they are the trigger point for a slowdown. He might have just gotten one too, because he's fallen right back now from Magnussen, losing all of that time coming through Tertre Rouge. So just a slight little lift off there for Dwayne Burns. And we got a battle for position in LMP1-2. Harold Stadler and Robert Northway. Northway, of course, making the contact with Eric Thorpe at the very start, but he's looking incredibly quick here in the Audi, using a bit more charge out of the corner. Stadler has very little response, And through goes Northway into third place and making his way past a GTE round the outside of Indianapolis 2 for good measure. That's going to help him versus Stadler, but you can see the Porsche boosts just a little more between Indianapolis and Arnage. That's something that we saw Stadler use to good effect more towards the start of the race, but it hasn't helped him this time around.
Yeah, that GT car did a very good job. Actually got out of the way as wow, using all the track to get by him there. And clears him through the Porsche curves.
Or does he? Oh, no. Northway holding on. Oh, that was very close between the two of them, almost making rear quarter contact. How close do you want? Robert Northway unsuccessful in his attempt at that. We'll get an onboard replay of that as well, thanks to our friends at Modem Simulation. What a battle between Harold Stadler and Robert Northway here. So through goes Stadler using a bit extra boost out of Arnage. And Northway holding around the outside. And that's how close they got.
That was almost millions of dollars of damage right there.
Man, and that's at over 200 kilometers an hour as well. Very brave driving between these drivers, but it looks like Stadler has cleared Northway for the time being. Falling back slightly in that Audi is Robert, but a great battle between those two.
Harlow's got himself out to a massive advantage now. Better part of 5 seconds over O'Leary in second. Cameron Dance back there a second off of him in third. So these top 3 in GT have really spread out over the last couple of laps. 20 seconds back to the rest of the pack, in fact.
Yeah, Harlow's put down some really good lap times over the last couple of occasions. He did 2 3:48s in a row, which is pretty similar to his qualifying time, only less than a second off. So Harlow's definitely got the race setup sorted out in that Altus Esports Porsche. But O'Leary has no choice but to watch him drive away in the distance. They got some company, though, in the form of Simon Mazzomo's LMP1. That is our overall race leader making his way through the top GTE battle right now. You see just how quickly he clears them, too. Look at them disappear!
Easy.
Look at them!
It's so easy for the LMP1 cars.
I love the World Endurance Championship, can I just say? I love this style of racing. Always so much fun to watch. O'Leary and Dance. It looks like they're quite comfortable to maintain this level of operation between them. Just keeping the gap close enough that Dance gets the draft, but not so close that the aero of his car is interfered with, because, you know, while the GTEs do produce a lot less downforce than the P1s, they do still get affected by dirty air at high speeds to an extent, so you need to be careful about how you follow another car. Dance looking very strong in these slower sections.
He is. O'Leary's under pressure here. And the good news for them is these LMP1 cars catch them in a good place. Your worst spot on the track is into the final 2 chicanes, if a car catches you there. I was making the point earlier that you see a lot of GT cars get out of the way through the corners. As we get towards the end of the race, that's not likely to happen because they're going to be in their own battles. So that's when it starts to become more and more difficult for the faster class of car. Catching someone through here as well is a troublesome spot.
Yeah, certainly is. I mean, in an LMP1, you can definitely go around the outside of these sweeping corners, but you got to be careful about when you clear the GT before the turn-in point. If you don't time it right, you're going to come together on the entry to the corner. Hopefully we don't see that happen towards the end of this race. But still, I'm really impressed with Thomas O'Leary in this race, have to say. He's stood up to the pressure incredibly well, kept his lap times consistent, and running in second for his troubles. So a good representation for Kinetic in the GTE class, and the amount of pressure that Dance is putting on him through these slower sections, it's quite impressive, I have to say.
It is, but at the moment, no change of position. O'Leary doing a good job to keep that gap stable. That's a car that's stationary. That's
Oh.
Aaron Pascoe. That looks like it might be... Well, I don't know. I don't know where that is.
That is down at the Mulsanne corner. That's on the exit, actually. So he has had a spin. He's gotten into the gravel on the exit.
I love how I just gave up trying to guess where that was.
It's all good, man. It's difficult to tell from close up exactly where on the circuit you are at times. Now, for Pascoe's incident, it wasn't over when he got into the gravel right here, because there's the car of Dave Trevethan coming up on him. Just collects him. So I get the feeling that if Trevethan... I mean, I'm not going to blame Trevethan for that. It was a very quick incident at the end of it, but I feel like Pascoe could have recovered that.
Would have.
Oh, there we go. Well, he was trying to get out of the way, wasn't he? You could see from the onboard.
How's the different... Oh, my God. How's the damage to Trevethan's car on the front end, then?
Yeah.
It looks like it's quite noticeable. He washes wide there. I think he's struggling for some front-end grip now.
Yeah, the front splitter of his car's been destroyed on the right-hand side. That's completely messed up the aero balance of his car, so he has absolutely no grip in the high-speed corners. Trevethan's going to have to bring that into the pits and get that damage repaired. Fortunately, drivers have one fast repair in the Majors series. They have to use it wisely. It's always interesting watching battles like this. It's hard to tell if it's a true stalemate between the drivers or if one of them is just really, really backing off. I would say in the case of Dance, it is backing off and measuring his performance, but this battle with O'Leary has been exactly the same since the green flag dropped, sorry. Kidding race and start and finish messed up. Did something happen, Ryan?
That was Jay you heard.
Oh no, it was Jay. Yeah. He's acting in surprise that O'Leary, he's pushing very hard through these slower sections of the circuit, isn't he?
He is. His event simulation replay very close to the wall on the exit of this corner. Just coming up in a moment's time. Almost slapped it with the left side of the car.
Yeah, it seems like O'Leary really likes using as much of that runoff as possible on the exit of Arnage, but yeah, really pushing it. Cameron Dance keeps it on the blue and yellow curb, but O'Leary, I think, might need to dial things back ever so slightly through that section of the circuit. Meanwhile, the battle for third in LMP1 is certainly not over. Harold Stadler making his way past Dave Trevethan, who's just come out of the pits. Robert Northway will go by him as well. And looks like it's all equaled out between them as a result of that. Northway still with a large gap back to Harold Stadler, but still going to have to wait and see how he uses the boost. Stephen Williams, meanwhile, bringing his LMP2 in. We're starting to see some regularly scheduled pit stops start to appear for that early first stint.
Yep, so the fit window opens now for some of the drivers after 45 minutes. And here's Colin Herman putting the pressure on Trevethan, who's certainly struggling now to recover the time that he's lost.
Yeah, coming under a bit of pressure here from a lapping machine.
Stockton's just spun it through the Porsche curves.
Oh no, another problem for an LMP2 runner. As the move is completed, yeah, that's a big problem for Stockton. Difficult place to get it back onto the circuit too. Has to wait for a gap. Let's take a look at what happened to him then. Very easy part of the circuit to make a mistake. Such high speeds and no margins for error. It happened at the first corner of the Porsche curves. So was this just, mid-corner, the rear letting go? Downforce is on a knife edge through that section. You want just enough rear wing to keep the rear planted, but a little bit too little there in Stockton's case, so looks like that's an easy position there for Scott Newton.
As we get into the pit stop window, let's talk about the pit entry, because there's a damn chicane in the pit entry.
There is. There definitely is. Mirroring the first two chicanes around here. So we see Dance drawing up ever closer to Thomas O'Leary. I feel like he is constantly on the verge of making a move and then he doesn't. But when these guys come up to the pit stop, I would expect Dance and O'Leary to pit together. It's very hard to extend the stint by another lap here at Le Mans. So they're going to have to be very careful. Oh no, a problem for Newton. And that's at the S's. Seems like a lot of our LMP2 runners are experiencing issues at the moment.
Yeah, the rear end not providing them the grip they want, and it's over-rotating and turning them around. And, ooh, looks like he might have caught the fence. Here we go. Motor Simulation going to toss a tail. He has made the fence.
Yeah, just slightly tapping it, and it
That
looks like...
a precarious spot. He was offline, getting by the GTE, clips to the grass.
Okay. Well, that's something that can happen in that section of the circuit. The S is going over the crest of that hill. If you're on the outside, very easy for the front end to wash out, and you can't quite see where the left edge of the track is, so that's very unfortunate for Newton. Straight back into a battle, though, because here he is not battling, or yes, battling with Phil Otto for the top 10 in the class. Right back on it, too. But this is a lesson, I think, for the LMP2 drivers. Once you start getting to the 10th lap or so of the stint, it's time to start pushing a little bit less on those tyres because they'll start to overheat. There's Matt Andrews, one of our first LMP1s in the pits.
Kind of deceptive. I was watching Harlow, I thought he was going to pit. But you actually use a bit of the pit entry for a moment to swing it into that first chicane using all the racetrack available to you.
Yeah, that's something you're going to see quite a few drivers doing. It's almost like they're faking for a pit stop, but what they're actually doing is widening the entry so they can carry more speed through the first part of that chicane, which is fair enough, but going over those curbs on the right-hand side at the pit entry can definitely unsettle the car, so it's not something that you'll see too many drivers attempt. Oh, hello. That's a problem there. And we'll get another modem simulation replay for your pleasure. That's Colin Herman. And he's gone straight on there, a bit too hard into the first Mulsanne chicane.
That's an odd one.
Yes. Quite interesting. I get the feeling that sometimes when it comes to the entry to those chicanes, they do have a quick entry and then tighten up when you go to turn in the opposite direction. So difficult to get the car balanced right. Mazzomo, meanwhile, our LMP1 leader, having a few adventures here with some oversteer in his Porsche.
Big water cars at the moment, making their way by Johnny Bell. Jack Alesi just had them all go by. Bell's just had them all go by. And now Newton dives to pit lane. Otto stays out. Martin Houston comes in.
Jonathan Ben has also brought his GTE into the pits from down the order in the class. There's Martin Houston and Scott Newton officially entering the pit lane after that very interesting entry. So now it's a battle of the pit stop times between these two LMP2s. We'll see who has the advantage. Jonathan Ben just taking a moment to relax, apparently, as he gets the work done on his cars. He's apparently literally just moved into his new house last night, so he's got his priorities sorted with the sim rig there.
I know that feeling. Moved into this joint. Before I moved my bed in, I moved my rig in and did a broadcast from here.
Good job. Very good job. And now Simon Mazzomo is making his way towards his pit box. Seeing all the LMP1 cars pitting at around the same time. In terms of the battle between Houston and Newton, Scott Newton with some extra damage to repair. He is still at a standstill in his stop. Martin Houston has gone away with 27.7 seconds standing still. Matthias Magnussen with a great advantage now over Dwayne Burns. Neither of these guys have pitted yet, so that would have been influenced by traffic to some extent. So there goes Mazomo out of the pits and followed by Dean Moll. That's really closed up the gap at the lead for LMP1.
It's non-existent. He's getting 6 seconds. Oh, he's lost it.
There we go. Mazomo right out of the pits there with the spin. That will be a very unhappy Simon Mazomo working his way back through the order after that one. So Dean Moll now is going to take the effective lead of this race. It looked like it had all gone wrong for Kinetic at the start, but now it's Fitzstuy's turn to make mistakes.
What happened? Because he had almost a 7-second margin before the pit stop. It evaporated in the lane.
Yeah, completely. I feel like, Dean Moll's stop was 23.8 seconds, Mazomo's 31.2. The cars should fill up at the same rate as part of the balance of performance measures. See what happened to him coming here into the chicane. Oh, just hit the curb, and that's what unsettled the car. On those cold tyres, they don't have much wiggle room to keep your grip up. So big shame for Mazomo.
He turned in too early. It's like he turned in at where he would have if he was at full speed, but because he was going much slower, the car gripped very easily.
Well, he's still on track, still carrying no damage. He still has a chance at getting this done. Meanwhile, entering the pits, our second place battle in LMP2. Will Leslie is already at a standstill in his box as these guys come up to him. Magnussen, Burns, and King all together now in the pits.
Shane Bowen has got to slow down. Eric Thorpe goes by him very easily as a result, down the main straight.
Yeah, not good times for Bowen. As the gap between O'Leary and Dance now out to over a second. It's a quick stop for Will Leslie in the lead of LMP2. He's managed to get back out on track again. That's a 26.4 second stop. Matthias Magnussen has made his way out in front of Dwayne Burns as well. No change for position between those guys. John King as well making his way out of the pits. So racing resumes for that section of LMP2. Shane Bowen, meanwhile, having to get on a bit of a recovery drive here. With that slowdown that he suffered. We're just getting some news now that Robert Northway has retired. So we did think we'd have one retirement in LMP1 with Eric Thorpe, but he is back out now. And Robert Northway has confirmed our first retirement for LMP1. Big shame for him. He was running pretty well there, up in fourth at the time. But it was not to be for Robert.
It's very tough to see who's actually where in all of this. Once you will start to go a lap down in the middle of a pit stop phase as well. Big shake up to the order. Not least of which Mazomo unceremoniously spinning from the lead. O'Leary and Dance still haven't pitted, have they?
Yeah. In terms of, well, all of our LMP1 runners have pitted. We've still got Skurlock, Stockton, Bowen, and Otto in LMP2. And in GTE, we've got JSH yet to pit, O'Leary and Dance yet to pit. We've still got Morton, Pafici, Clote, Taylor, and Huang in GTE as well, yet to come in for a stop.
Don't want to do that
Ooh.
particularly often. Two
No.
tires of gravel is flirting with disaster. Especially as you start to apply the power.
Yeah, certainly. It's a nice wide curb on the exit of the last corner here at Le Mans, but sometimes it can be a bit too inviting. So Dance and O'Leary, the gap extending between them once again. And Dance here contending with Colin Herman as we see more LMP2 runners come into the pits. So that's going to be Michael Skurlock and Shane Bowen, as well as Damon Stockton coming into the pits. And these guys all holding the lead of the class at the time, but we should see Will Leslie shoot back into the lead of the LMP2 race as a result of this, which he does.
Leslie into the back of Xing Huang.
Oh, no.
Turns him around on the entry to the final chicane.
Oh, he did too. Oh, that's a big shame. We'll have to see how heavy the contact was. Huang making his way back onto the circuit and resuming running, but modem simulation replay of that incident, it just looks to me like Huang, that's interesting. He was going for the turn in, but there was Leslie. He thought he'd go for it anyway. It looks like Huang wasn't ready to give up that inside.
Looks like they've escaped without any damage to either car, but either way, you can see there, maybe a little bit too ambitious from Leslie. Could have waited a little bit longer. Similarly, Huang could have given more room. Call that as a racing incident.
The gap between Cameron Dance and Thomas O'Leary is now 8 seconds as Cameron Dance has gotten a slowdown.
That's a mammoth slowdown.
Yeah, quite. He spun as well, apparently, did Cameron Dance. And actually, I'm looking at his car now, and it's very bad news. He is missing his hood. His front bumper is crumpled. Cameron Dance is in trouble.
All right, Jay. He's going to get paid the big bucks. Go find the contact. He got 40 cars to go through. Oh, he's found it.
Well, we'll see what happened to Cameron Dance here, and it looks like it was a genuine mistake at the second Mulsanne chicane. Just gets that's interesting.
Yeah, that's the hardware failure. That car turned hard right.
Wow. Okay. No good for Cameron Dance. The car just kept turning past the point where he would have straightened it out. And straight into the wall as well. The wheels, the steering wheels didn't even move through the course of that incident. So now Cameron Dance is going to have to stop for a bit longer. And he's having further issues as well, coming down the stretch up to the Porsche curves. That car is looking incredibly hard to drive right now.
Yeah, so he's going to have to take that fast repair much earlier than wanted. He's in the fence again.
Oh.
That car's understeering like a dump truck at the moment. In fact, look at the wheel. It's bent. Steering's broken. Car's done.
That is such a shame.
Going to limp it back to pit lane. He's trying to go as fast as he can, but look at the angle that front right wheel's on. That's not normal.
Yeah, definitely not. He's still got a fast repair in hand, so he'll definitely use that when he brings it into the lane, but
when you can see the side of the wheel from a head-on shot, you know something's wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very slow pit entry there for Cameron Dance. He's got an awful lot of work to do in the next 90 minutes.
On the bright side, he can get some fuel and tires on the car now.
He definitely can. He could almost class this as a kind of unscheduled early pit stop. He's not going to suffer in terms of time if he takes his fast repair, so he's already suffered enough having to bring the car in.
I think he just drove into the garage. He
just nudged the garage, but then got the fast repair applied, so all well and good for Cam.
I think he's retired. Nope.
No.
He's back.
Yep.
He jumped out of the car for a moment.
Just for a little. Well, John King now into third with news coming in about Cameron Dance. He's been having PC issues, and that is what caused the crash. So Dance with some technical issues, what could put paid to what has been a very good drive so far. Meanwhile, this battle in LMP2 for third place, John King has managed to take it from Dwayne Burns and starting to pull away. King is really coming alive now in this middle stage.
He is. He's starting to find some good time. Now, he's still 20 seconds off the race lead, but we've seen already, very easy to make mistakes and lose a bunch of time. So he's still just hanging on in there, and he could definitely challenge Magnussen for second place in the not-too-distant future as well.
We will have to wait and see as Daniel Stevens brings his car in for the second time. And this is going to be a regularly scheduled one for Daniel Stevens here in fourth place in LMP1. It's now going to be fifth as Matt Andrews has made his way by. Burns, meanwhile, staying within the draft of John King here. And they've come up on some traffic as well. That's Matt Cloet. That's going to hurt Burns here, having to back off in the middle of the chicane, taking the outside line to get by. Cloet, of course, doing nothing wrong there. It's just the nature of multi-class racing, but Burns has come off the worst out of it.
To say this is getting towards the point where we're starting to see some mistakes form for drivers out there. It's been about an hour and 10 minutes. It's not a long run. But then when you get this far in and then realize you still got an hour and a half to go, it can play a bit of mind game on you.
Yeah, it certainly can. Well, here we go. Dwayne Burns making the move on John King. He got the draft down the stretch to Indianapolis, and that is a very cleanly completed overtaking move ahead into the corner. And there we go. Our GTE leader is in the pits. In comes Jackson Suzlin-Harlow. We can expect Thomas O'Leary in as well. In he comes. Philip Morton, meanwhile, has managed to make his way up to third in the midst of all of this. And it looks like he's going to be bringing it into the pits as well. Cameron Dance is back out on track, but still having PC issues, so not a good time for one Fitstyle Motorsport driver, but two others coming into the pits. Jackson Suzlin-Harlow up onto the jacks now, taking tyres. Oh no, that's a problem for Jonathan Ben. That's Jay is going to take that one for commentator's curse, flipping to Jonathan Ben just as he had an incident. It's a big shame for him, losing some time, but still running within the midfield in our GTE class, further towards the back. Harlow is away.
So the lead closing for LMP1 as well, by the way, Reese. It's down to 2.1 seconds. Well, 2.9 now, as I mentioned that. Dean Wall.
Oh, Mazuma just got to slow down. There we go. Okay, we'll wait a couple of corners more for this LMP1 lead battle to resume. Oh, 2 in a row, Jay says. We've seen Jackson Suzlin-Harlow make his way out of the pits, and LMP1 leader Dean Mole making his way by him now on the exit of Tetra Rouge. In terms of the cars behind Harlow, well, O'Leary has lost even more time in the pit stop. Just comparing pit stop times now. Well, it was only a second longer, but it seems like he just hasn't been able to get up to speed as well.
It seems like Harlow's just freakishly quick.
Yes, that is also an option.
I mean, he's got a lot of cars behind him now. I mean, we knew he'd be fast coming into today, but he's really gone to work the rest of the field, hasn't he?
Yeah, it looks like a Sunday drive for Harlow now. He's completely on his lonesome in terms of position, and, well, the prototypes making his way past him won't be phasing him at all. Harold Stadler just making his way past third place in LMP1. So it's looking like a nice comfy race for Harlow now, and a comfy race for O'Leary too. He had danced right behind him, but now he has a lot less pressure to deal with. Only pressure coming from himself, as we've gotten news that he got a slowdown. Alex Court has put himself up into second place here with a very short pit stop to start things off. Pitted 11 laps ago, and he's a driver that will have been reverse engineering this race. Looks like O'Leary is really starting to make tracks now on Alex Court, well within the draft range. But they've got a prototype to contend with here coming onto the entry of Indianapolis. Side by side, Thomas O'Leary. He's having to let Matt Andrews go there around the outside, and this is the chance that he's needed. Alex Court getting compromised at the apex, and O'Leary's going to fire it up the inside at Arnage, or is he? They make contact. Court turned in early and getting a half spin for his troubles. But there we go. Thomas O'Leary back by into second place in GTE.
Now, I wonder if he wants to redress that, because it wasn't clean. If he feels he was at fault or not.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see there.
He didn't get alongside him.
No, he didn't.
He did, but not by enough, if you know what I mean. The B-pillar rule is basically what the driver is, and at the turn-in point, he was at his quarter panel.
Yeah, not up to the B-pillar at the time of contact. Be interesting to see what race control thinks of that one. And if there's going to be a penalty applied towards the end for Thomas O'Leary. But in the pits, another GT runner, Jin Huang, down in 30th position. He is out of the car. So that might be a problem there for Jin. And that's down at Arnage. Something's gone very wrong for him there.
Just like real Le Mans.
Yeah.
Failures everywhere.
Okay, well, he was lifting off to let the P2 go. He might have run out of fuel, maybe?
That LMP2 car almost cleaned up the fence as well. So it telltale tire marks. It ran very wide.
Yeah,
but yeah,
sure.
he's out of fuel.
Yeah, so... Yeah, Jin Huang, he has not taken a stop yet, so... Well, there we go. He is out, and it's on for the overall lead. Once again, Audi versus Porsche, Kinetic versus Fitzstye, Dean Moll versus Simon Mazzomo.
Mazzomo might get a slowdown at the chicane here.
Oh boy.
Now that we've mentioned it.
Yeah. if past actions are anything to go by, we'll wait and see. Oh, no, it looks like a clean run from him through the corner this time around, so he can continue the fight. And you can see the amount of boost he's employing in the Porsche, a little bit of extra acceleration off the chicane. Lifts off, though, behind Moll, not electing to go for the move just yet.
I think those glasses are a new addition to him as well.
Yeah, looks like it. He'll have a very good in-focus view of Dean Moll's rear bumper at the moment.
You can't hide anything from us now with these webcams.
No, certainly not.
Jay is always watching.
This is Big Brother. And there is, making his way past a Kinetic LMP2. Both of them managed to get by. That was John King. And Mazzomo at Indianapolis.
All right, new rule. Yeah. We don't mention Mazzomo anymore every time we talk about him.
What car 969? I don't see a car 969. He's making his way back past John King there. Slight mistake into Indianapolis. Oh no,
Or
that's
someone
Pierre
else.
Cousin down at the first Mulsanne chicane. Looks like he might have done that all on his own there. We will get a modem simulation replay to dissect the event.
That button's going to work out today.
Yeah,
All
certainly
by
is.
himself. I'd say he probably lost to rear end here. He has.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just at the point where you lift off the brakes to point yourself towards the second corner. The car can get unsettled. The rear end just breaks free. Unfortunate for Pierre, but at least he is still running, and if he can get to the finish, it'll certainly be an achievement.
Under 90 minutes, an hour 25 to go now, getting very close to the halfway point of this one. There's Shane Bowen, currently running in 7th place.
The next car up the track for him is Damon Stockton in 6th place in LMP2, just making his way into turn 1 now. In terms of lap times, a 3:33 for Stockton, 3:35 for Bowen on the last lap, so he is still getting up to speed. And of course, maybe has to deal with a slowdown or two along the way as well. But Bowen, having started as well as he did, certainly wanting to get back up into that top 5 in this class and join his teammate, Dwayne Burns.
Not long until all the LMP2 cars are put a lap down here. Mole's only about 20 or so seconds away from them, maybe even less. And that will leave us with just your 6 LMP1 cars on the lead lap. Eric Thorpe still in 6th place after that massive incident on lap 1.
Here we go. Lead battle take 3, Jay says. Let's see what Simon Mazzomo can do versus Dean Mole this time. And they're in roughly the same position that they were this time last lap. Mazzomo with the extra boost once again out of the second Mulsanne chicane. The extra charge of the Porsche working in his favour. Oh no, he's not able to take advantage. They had some GT traffic in the former Johnny Bell. Only one lane for the two. So move not completed for Mazzomo this time around. He's going to have to wait, potentially, for Indianapolis.
You should get this one. At some point, he's definitely got the pace over Mole. Of course, he's only back there because he had that spin and the shocking pit stop. Now, if he has another bad pit stop, he might end up back behind Mole. So he's really got to put the hard yards in here and make sure he pulls a bit of a margin so he has a safety net to fall back on.
Yes, indeed. Pushing very hard on the exit of Indianapolis. Got to think about the differences between the Audi and the Porsche as well. I did say at the start the Porsche can be faster on the straights. The Audi's advantage is in the long sweeping corners. It's very nice through the Porsche curves. So Mole must not be in front of Mazzomo by the time they get there, and Mazzomo is looking to secure that. He goes down the inside of Dean Mole to take the overall lead finally, and that will feel very good for Simon. Not that his face will show much of it. It's all concentration from here. Got to be careful of this GT traffic. It's going to bring them back together. That's Gavin Barber. Right at the exit of the Porsche curves. That's one of the worst places to come up to lap traffic. Dean Mole, it seems, not wanting to go for the move back on Mazzomo. Content to stay behind for now and have another run later on. But Simon Mazzomo crosses the line back in the lead of this race. Jay saying that he should have had the webcam on because Simon Mazzomo let out a huge sigh as he crossed the finish line, and what a relief it would be. Now he can focus on the clear track ahead of him, try and navigate the traffic as best he can and extend that lead versus Mole.
You know what I think our newest feature needs to be on these broadcasts by SimSpeed TV? Now in real life you hear the radio chatter of the teams and you can hear the race director as well.
Yes.
Well, we need to be able to hear our TV director. We need a I'm trying to think of a smart name for it, but we need Jay's audio coming through sometimes.
And he's saying no, we don't.
There's a name we haven't talked about all race long.
Yes.
Giovanni Pacifici?
Pacifici, maybe.
One of us got it right.
Well, Philip Morton, regardless, is on older tyres here. Well, on newer tyres, my apologies. Words fail me today. Woke up with a migraine this morning, so I'm not operating at 100%. I do apologise, ladies and gentlemen.
I woke up with a migraine too. It was Chase Voice.
Goodness me. Morton looking very good there at the end of the Porsche curves as we're hearing another change for the lead.
Dean Mole. Back through.
Okay, and that's down... Right. Now, what section of the Mulsanne Straight was that on? That was coming out of the second Mulsanne chicane. We'll get a modem simulation replay of that. Oh, it was Mazomo making a mistake. He went straight on. He had to take the escape road. That's what's let Mole back by.
The escape chicane.
Yes. The escape chicane. Jay is proposing alternate chicane. I would say all three are equally valid, but still, big shame for Simon Mazomo. You can tell that he has the pace to go away with the win here, but just struggling with consistency is, that's a problem there for Clote. And Cameron Dance makes his way back past him into the top 5 again. Also getting news that Michael Skurlock is now out of the race. So one of our hardest fighters in LMP2 bringing his race to an end. We've got some interesting news about Harold Stadler, Ryan. This could change a few things.
That's the news. He's fast. He's closing. He was 4.5 seconds back when they crossed the line last time. It's now 2.2 between himself and the race leader, Dean Mole. Make that 2 seconds. He's flying.
Absolutely is. And big run up to the Porsche curves for Harold Stadler. Have a look at him coming out of the final chicane as well. He's right on the boost strat, making it work very well. With this traffic that Mole and Mr. Mazomo are making their way through, only increases the advantage, having to contend with an LMP2 coming into the S's. Mazomo's going to have to hold back here.
And now remember, Stadler and Mazomo are teammates, so don't expect them to fight. They might work together here in order to close in on Mole, because they've both got pace.
They certainly have. Question being, what is Stadler going to do on this lap? Is he going to be able to jet up to the back of Mazomo? Because the gap is still staying at 1 and a bit seconds between these guys. But they're now all sharing roughly the same piece of track, and the next pieces of traffic, Wayne Taylor and Bradley Matheson in the MFR BMWs. They make their way by Matheson with no trouble to our top 2. Looks to me like Stadler's just saving boost, potentially, because he's not gaining a huge amount on Mazomo here.
Something I just noticed too, from the cockpit view, you can actually see the road once you've got the wheel turned about 90 degrees, because your virtual hand takes up the screen.
Yeah, that it does. The cockpit of the Porsche 992. Oh,
That's got an awkward point.
oh, goodness me. Yeah, Wayne Taylor just minding his own business there as our leaders came through. Fortunately, there wasn't any big incident out of that. But Mole is definitely keeping Mazomo honest here, keeping the gap consistent. And I reckon with the superior cornering grip of the Audi, if he plays his cards right in the Porsche curves, he might be right onto the back of Mazomo by the end of the lap here.
Now, if they just stay like this for an hour and 15 minutes, you're in for a fantastic finish.
Yeah, we certainly are. But that be the way of multi-class racing, the ebb and flow, the unexpected. We may be looking at a very completely different race when the checkered flag flies. Mole electing to keep the gap consistent to Mizomo this time around. As they come through the Porsche curves, you can see how much more trouble Mizomo is having keeping that thing online. Mole just sticking nicely to the racing line through pretty much every corner of those Porsche curves. It's paid off for him here. That might be a slightly better exit from Mole from the forward chicane. Meanwhile, Mizomo, his line was slightly off. So definitely a good draft for Mole here. Comparing lap times, Harold Stadler's back to regular pace. That last lap was incredibly quick from him, but back to a 3-minute 23 for this one. Might be saving up the charge for another proper run at Mole and Mizomo.
Yeah, only about half a second back now, Mole. But Stadler, yeah, an interesting ebb and flow from him.
Well, it's something that you got to think about because in LMP1s, you get a maximum amount of charge you can use per lap. Matt Andrews bringing his Porsche into the pits. So you have a maximum amount of charge that the battery can hold at any one time, and then you've got a maximum amount of charge you can deploy over the whole lap. And if you deploy too much too early, you're going to have nothing to come back with over the next few laps. So you've got to keep it consistent. So Stadler, I think, with his turn of pace, might have been using a bit more boost than he would have otherwise, and is now recovering that extra energy.
Yeah, I think we'll definitely get a good picture when we get into the final stint. I mean, how many stops have we got left? We've got probably 2 more stops left.
Something along the lines of that for the LMP1s if their stint is around 10 or 11.
Once we get into that final stint, drivers are going to be pushing to the limit. That's when we're really going to see how it's going to pan out, because as with endurance racing, we don't really know what everyone's got. Hello.
Okay. Big problem there. Dean Mole has actually... He's gotten damage. Dean Mole is struggling to keep his car in a straight line as a result of that contact with Adam Richards. And that was a spin right at the end of the Mulsanne straight. So what happened to Richards here? Lock up into the corner, and then the rear end just came round. Well, here comes Dean Mole and Simon Mizomo. Mizomo would have made his way by without incident, but Mole not as lucky. So here comes Mizomo through Mulsanne, and you'll see the GTE by the side of the track just coming up into the frame. Mizomo avoids him, but Mole just glancing off him with his rear quarter, and that has completely destroyed half of the rear of his car. It looked like only a small bit of contact, but that's all she wrote, and some interesting avoiding action from Harold Stadler.
Yeah, Mole's taking a trip to the gravel at the moment.
That's a big shame for Mole.
So you know when I said if they can start this for another hour and 15 minutes?
Well, it didn't. And oh no, right into the tyre barrier for Mole. That's a big problem for him. He's gone to escape and he's gone straight back to the garage. I think Dean Mole might be done.
At least until he gets that tow completed and the spare car. Either way, he's down with the contention for the race lead. Now there's 5 seconds between Mizomo and Stadler. Stadler lost some time trying to avoid that spun car as well. He had to take a bit of an evasive action as well.
Well, at the very least, I think the two Fitzstye Porsches can rest assured that they've carried minimal damage out of that one. It's just a blip on the radar for them. Not so for Dean Mole and Kinetic. Kinetic are having a good time in LMP2, though, because they are running 1-2 with Leslie and Magnussen. And these guys have been the stars of the show, I reckon, in LMP2. We haven't focused too much on them, but they've remained in these top 2 positions almost the entire time. And putting down some very consistent lap times as well, barely making a single mistake.
There's been some really good performances and drives so far in this field. Across all the classes, which has been good to see. Has been some hard luck stories as well, which we've obviously seen. I think Pacifici's done a fantastic job getting 12 spots in GTE to find himself 4th in class.
I would agree. Pacifici really glanced over his name at the very start of this one. Oh, there's a problem. Oh. Having trouble picking the side of the circuit to let Harold Stadler through. That's the issue with multi-class. If you're a GTE, you need to pick a side and stick to it. And ultimately, no harm, no foul for these guys, but Stadler has lost a lot of time out of that. Here's the onboard. He goes to the right, and Pacifici, well, he tries to swap, and that's just a miscommunication between Prototype and GT there.
When you're going a lap down, you always need to just hold your line and let the car behind find its way by you. It's better to do that than to try and get out of the way for them, because that's where that miscommunication can arrive.
Yeah, agreed. And I've driven a fair bit of Prototype in my time on sim racing. I would agree. It's much better to just pick a line and let the faster car find their way around rather than trying to make it easier for them, because you may just end up making it harder for the both of you.
Did you drive that Prototype to get what it's to so you can see what it feels like to actually lap someone?
I've won a championship in the HPD, dude.
Yes. So yes.
I am not just driving for traffic. I'm driving to win, bro. But there's been no such issue for these guys down the straight. Gavin Barber and Jack Alessi fighting for the top 10 in GTE and having to contend with some Prototype traffic as well. Clote and Court in a battle too. So MF Racing has got their hands full in 2 different places on the circuit right now.
Yeah, Clote runs a bit wide there, and Court's going to get the run out of the corner. Can he draw alongside him as he run down the straight and we get close to the Porsche curves?
Side by side on the entry. This is going to be an interesting one for Alex Court. Outbraking maneuvers at the Porsche curves, a knife edge at the best of times, but he is ahead at the turn-in point. Can he keep the grip up through the corner? Yes, he can. Doesn't push too hard. Alex Court through.
Yeah, I think Clote rolled off and let him go through there. Didn't want to fight that one. Not that point in the track anyway.
Stadler and Mazzomo are in the pits meanwhile. Stadler undershot his pit box slightly. He's going to lose a couple of seconds out of that one. But our top 2 in LMP1 in the pits and getting their service done for this particular stint of the race. And there goes our top 2 in LMP2 as well.
In unison.
Leslie and Magnussen. So it looks like both teams playing a good game here. Kinetic and Fitzstye. Dwayne Burns with the flag bearer for Avatar Auto Racing. Doing very well in 3rd place right now. Dean Moll has resumed running in 5th place in LMP1. He remains ahead of Matt Andrews and Eric Thorpe, and he is still on the lead lap, crucially. That is very important for Moll.
Indeed it is. Just having a look at where Leslie and Magnussen are going to rejoin. Such a long pit stop. It's tertiary for such a massive amount of time. Magnussen comes out. He was alongside him for a moment.
Goodness, yeah, they were pretty even there for a moment, but Leslie holds on to that lead position. And out comes Dwayne Burns behind them. Ultimately, looks to me like pit stops for Leslie and Magnussen, 42 and 39. Dwayne Burns' pit stop only 26 seconds. So Burns doing very well at the moment as Dean Moll finds his way back into the pits again. Not too happy with that car at the moment.
Well, that's the new car he got. Maybe he forgot to fill it up when he got the spare car.
Yeah, I think that might have been it.
Dan.
Oh, that's down at the first chicane. And once again, it's a webcam moment that we have missed, because Jay loves telling us all these great stories about what the drivers did when they did that incident.
Not actually showing us.
Yeah. Jay's saying we can join the feed if we want. Yeah, but what about the spectators? They want to see it too.
It's the whole point of the webcam, Jay.
Jay's big brother, he's always watching, he says. This is the kind of stuff that happens in long races at SimSpeed. We just end up going in this endless back and forth with our director, of which the viewers can only understand half.
Well, what happened to the Coca-Cola 600? That turned into a nice semi-decent broadcast from us two. Jay joined, and the broadcast turned into an absolute meme.
Absolutely did. I mean, we've still got an hour left in this one, and I don't think Jay wants to bring the memes for an hour. He's got Max Bance with me later on. That's when we're going to bring the memes. Jay is saving the memes for Max Bance.
I'm going to sleep after this.
And so you should. You've been up since 1 a.m. your time. You've been a very busy boy too, Ryan.
I mean, I had a nana nap. Which was rudely interrupted by Jay. Get up, you got a broadcast!
You chose this life, Ryan.
Yes. The life chose me.
I guess you could say it chose me as well. I mean, Jay will remember when I first started at SimSpeed, back when we were V8s online, I was not very confident. I was not a good commentator. I did not want to do it. But ultimately, the life chose me, and here we are.
What changed?
Nothing. Nothing changed at all. I'm still the same awkward, nerdy guy I always have been. Daniel Stevens, with his Porsche, making his way through the S's, looking very smooth for now. He's just taking it with a little bit less pushing from Daniel Stevens, I reckon, given the incidents he's had so far.
How long ago was that race when you started?
That was like 2013, something like that. So I'm a pensioner.
Yeah. 2013 doesn't feel like it should be 7 years ago.
Yeah, it doesn't. I feel older and older every single day.
Well, that's because you are getting older and older every single day.
Well, yeah.
That's how it works, right?
Technically correct is the best kind of correct, isn't it?
Yes.
Well,
right.
in terms of the race we've got going on track at the moment, I'm looking at my timing, and it seems that the only close battle on track at the moment is Barber and Alice down in 10th and 11th in the GTE class. Both of these guys having made their way up from the lower positions. Gavin Barber started 4th last, and Jack Alessi, the dead last car starting in this race. So for him to make his way up and challenge for the top 10 in class, it's been a profitable night for Alessi so far.
Certainly has. Another one of those good stories of the race so far. With these races, we've seen plenty of mistakes and big drivers making errors all the way from lap 1 up until most recently Dean Mole. If you just keep your car and your nose clean, you could be in for a good result. Seeing that here for Barber and for Alessi. They're covered by a second. Leslie and Magnussen are covered by a second as well.
Yes, Leslie and Magnussen, our two effective prototype leaders.
Interesting
Shane Bowen.
how long Stockton, Bowen, and Newton set out.
Yeah, Stockton, Bowen, and Newton have been out for quite some time here. I think, I'm not quite sure what the fuel strategy is going to be for Kinetic from here. Okay, so we're getting some news from Jay. Will Leslie, his laps have been 11 laps long. His stints have been 11 laps long, if I can find the words. Scott Newton is currently on the 13th lap of his stint. So obviously we have to consider that Leslie and Magnussen have been running in those top two positions for the majority of the race. They haven't had any incidents. Scott Newton, meanwhile, has had a few. So I think the less fuel used on the laps where he has made mistakes has meant that his stint has been extended somewhat.
Yeah,
Either that, or he could be really pushing the fuel save early on.
Don't think he can stretch it to one stop, can he? From here.
I don't think that's possible.
We know that Leslie and Magnussen have to make another stop, but Newton, can he get to a point where he needs to make just a final stop here? I mean, you look at, they've done an hour and 40, he's in. They've done an hour and 40, and Magnussen's on lap 23. So an hour of racing, yeah, probably maybe 3 or 4 laps too many, I think.
Yeah.
He is, though, going to be able to short fuel when he does come in. That could put him in contention.
Yeah, certainly could. We'll have to wait and see for that. A very short stop at the end for Scott Newton, potentially. Made his way into the pits. And that was very close between himself and Claude on the entry. I don't think Newton was expecting Claude to commit to the pits as well. So that leaves Damon Stockton and Shane Bowen out there as the last two remaining LMP2s to take their second stop. And Jackson Suzlin-Harlow continues to hold the lead in GTE by an absolute country mile. Thomas O'Leary, well, Jackson is coming up to the Porsche curves, and O'Leary is all the way back at Indianapolis. So quite the gap that Harlow is enjoying at the moment, and probably one of his easiest leads yet.
21 seconds the margin, yeah. Still pushing it through there, though. Right up against the wall.
He's keeping it nice and smooth, though. Just working the car a little through the Porsche curves. And that final left-hander in the Porsche curves is one that catches many drivers out. It's actually off camber. So you turn it a little too late and you sail past the apex. You don't even hit it. So the drivers do have to be careful through there. Take the turn a little bit slower than they think they need to. Working out all right for Harlow. He's kept his lines very consistent. Cameron Dance versus Giovanni Pacifici. Dance is really closing in on him here. Pacifici, one of the drivers that has managed to stay the least out of trouble in this race. His last lap, 3:53, 3:50 for Cameron Dance.
Dance, I'm trying to recover, isn't he?
Yeah, certainly is. Fighting for the lead early on, but with his crash and the hardware issues he's been experiencing, he's driving wounded. But if he can get back up into a podium position by the end, it'll certainly be a race he can come away with at least neutrally. Stockton and Bowen, meanwhile, currently leading the LMP2 class. They still have to bring it into the pits. We're expecting them in at any moment. See if they decide to pull to the right this time. Yes, they do. Both of them coming in. Nice long stint for both of those guys. We'll see if it pays off for them more towards the end. Dance now right on the back of Pacifici. Very slight defense from the Porsche, but not using as much of the curb there. Cameron Dance with the superior line in that section, but he's going to have to stay behind through this section. The S's One line only. Can't go side by side unless you're extremely confident. So Dance, it looks like, is going to have to wait until the first Mulsanne chicane to make this move, if not slightly before, through the slipstream out of Tete Rouge.
He should get him here with relative ease, shouldn't he? Yeah, be a bit of a slingshot move as he pulls alongside.
Pacifici lifting off.
He rolls off and lets him go. They can't really fight that. There's no point.
Well, there we go. Cameron Dance back through into 4th place in GTE. Philip Morton is the next car up, and he is out of... he's coming down the second part of the Mulsanne at the moment, so Dance has quite some time to make up. I'd say 10 or 15 seconds.
It's on for the lead of LMP2. Magnussen putting a lot of pressure now on Leslie.
Yeah, it looks like Magnussen with the quick pit stop. Remember, he was drawing almost level with Leslie when they came out of the pits, so Magnussen feels he can have a shot at winning this one. Thing is, though, Kinetic holding this very comfortable 1-2 at the moment. They don't want to put it in jeopardy, so if Magnussen wants to have a go at Leslie, he has to play his cards right, has to do it in the right place.
Where is the right place, Reese?
There are many potential right places around Le Mans, and every single one of those places can become the wrong place if you do it wrong. So, yes. Getting some news from our director, meanwhile, 4 battles in LMP2. Just scrolling through them now. Martin Houston and Dave Trevethan fighting it out for the top 10. Houston, another one of the Kinetic runners here, and starting, he's up 2 positions from where he started in class. Fighting hard as well are Phil Otto and Scott Newton, who brought themselves into the pits just a couple of laps ago. And Stockton and Bowen for 4th and 5th. LMP2 really coming alive in the middle stage. Oh, careful, Shane. That's going to give an advantage to John King right behind. He's going to have the run coming down the straight up to Indianapolis. Doesn't look like the straight is quite long enough for King to take the advantage, though, as Will Leslie and Matthias Magnussen continue flying in formation up at the front. And as Shane Bowen recovers from the mistake he made just a little earlier, now he is under full pressure from the Kinetic driver, John King. You might see him occasionally glance in his mirrors, but oh no, that's a bad exit from Arnage for Shane Bowen. Off on the AstroTurf, exit compromised, and John King is going to blast on by here into the Porsche curves. No trouble at all, and here comes Dean Moll as well. Continuing to fight his way back up. No, sorry, that's not Moll. That's Eric Thorpe that's made his way through in the Audi LMP1.
3 different lines being taken there. Notice. Trying to get some clean air as well.
Yeah, clean air incredibly important in these downforce-dependent prototypes. Modem simulation replay of Scott Newton and Phil Otto running side by side. And this was on the run up to the Porsche curves as well. Newton making his way past Otto and putting himself up into, that would be, I think, 8th place? 7th, my apologies.
So the closest lead battle is that LMP2 one. Mizoma's got a massive margin of 18 seconds, and then 25 seconds the gap in the 25 in the GTE battle.
Yeah, so now it's all about rhythm. It's all about consistency. Now that Mizomo is rid of his challenges up at the front, he's ended up improving in terms of consistency. His laps have been consistent, low 321s over the course of these last few laps. 323 on that one, but he did experience a little bit of traffic. So now that Mizomo is out in that clear air and on his own, just focusing on the lines, focusing on the car behavior, and he's doing very well, consolidating that lead.
Remember too that still a question mark over Stockton, where how much fuel he needs to put in on his final stop, and whether it's a small enough margin that he might be able to gain on Leslie or Magnussen.
Yeah, have to think about that, definitely. He's still running all right, but oh no, big problem for Stockton. Just as I say that, he spun at Mulsanne, and that's going to bring Stockton and Bowen right on by. Scott Newton is going to get a freebie from that as well.
Nice flick spin.
Yeah, not bad. Traction control toggle switched off, and away you go. Get a modem simulation replay of that one. Stockton just pushed a little bit too hard into Mulsanne, lost the apex, and then off the racing line, the rear end just came around. Fortunately, seems like the other drivers were able to avoid him, and I would have to agree with you, Ryan, that was a textbook flick spin. Houston versus Trevethan, meanwhile, for 8th place. Coming down to Mulsanne themselves. Martin Houston's race has been consistent but quiet. He stayed out of trouble. His car is incredibly clean, just as shiny as it was when it rolled off the floor. A couple of specs on Dave Trevethan's machine, but he's been fighting incredibly hard as well. Started down in 19th overall.
There's now just 6 cars on the lead lap, still your LMP1s. Few people a lap down, that's Will Leslie down to Martin Houston, all those LMP2 guys. The rest of LMP2 is 2 laps down. Harlow is 3 laps off, leading the rest of the pack. As you see, Pacifici's out on pit road.
Yeah, it looks like this might be a regularly scheduled stop for him. He's up on the jacks to change the tyres, and he is now away again. So for Pacifici, 55.2 second stop. That's not the quickest we've seen. Looks like Gavin Barber with the quickest pit stop in GTE so far, 33.5. But with 55 second stop there for Pacifici, that's quicker than just about everyone in front of him in terms of pit stops. We've seen pit stop times of a minute slightly more from most of our runners.
Add to that the traversal time too in the lane. And trying to get to the pit entry. Gavin Barber is going to pit in now as well. Interesting time to make pit stops though, isn't it? Seems like it could be a bit short of making it home to the end.
Yeah, this might be a confidence stop for a few of these guys, just to make sure that they have enough to stretch out that final stint to the end of the race. With coming up on 45 minutes to go, it's going to be, I'd say, a whole stint now for the GTEs. maybe 1 and a bit extra stints for the LMP1s. There goes Martin Houston, letting Dave Trevethan by on the entry to the first Mulsanne chicane. Great move from Trevethan to get 8th. Houston's not done with him, though. Staying very close. Getting a little bit of draft in a straight line, but electing to lift off. Almost saw a bit of oversteer from Trevethan and running a little wide through the second corner of that chicane as well. So this could potentially bring Houston back to him. Oh, here we go. The draft is definitely on. Oh, no, it's not. Houston pulls it back in again. Not going to be a huge overtaking move there. I reckon Indianapolis would probably be the most popular place to go for a move in the LMP2s. Question is he close enough? They do have the GTE of Pacifici to deal with.
He stays out of the way. They get by him with ease, and Houston's not going to be close enough to get by this time. But he's certainly there and stalking him now.
Shane Bowen and Scott Newton are together, and Newton is going to go for the move at turn 1. So that's moving up for him, Mr. Newton. That puts himself up into 5th place in class. It's been a pretty good run from him over the course of this. Will Leslie starting 7 positions ahead of him. And there is Cameron Dance in the pits as well, spinning the rear wheels. Waiting for the fuel to go. Oh, no, he's elected to stop that. This is quite the long stop for Dance.
Yes.
Overall, 61-second time, so fuel and tyres for Cameron Dance. And there's our 2 LMP2 leaders, and you can see that Magnussen has dropped back a fair way from Will Leslie over the last couple of laps. I wonder why. His last lap, 3 seconds slower, so he must have experienced traffic through a corner at some point. Either way, Kinetic's still running 1 and 2. We'll have a look at this. Whoa. Take it easy between Wayne Taylor and Cameron Dance. And oh, hang on a minute. There's Dave Trevethan as well. So Dance with the run, and oh, dearie me. Oh. I have no words, man. Like, it gets crazy down the Mulsanne at times, and it looks like Dance is just on the verge of getting the move done. Lunge up the inside, gets it done on Gavin Barber. Though not without a slight bit of contact there as our leader in the pits, though, Jackson Suzlin-Harlow, for what we can assume is his final pit stop of the night, and O'Leary following him in.
There's no reason for Harlow to push it coming into pit road. To be nice and conservative. O'Leary similarly so. He's a long way off the lead, and he's a long way clear of 3rd place too. I think
3rd place
battle is this LMP2 one, isn't it?
Yeah, I believe it is. Shane Bowen has caught back up to Scott Newton over the course of this lap. Not done by any means. And he'll be the face of concentration in his VR headset. The sensation of speed that you'd be getting with a headset like that through the Porsche curves would be spectacular, if not scary. They come up on a bit of traffic as well. Going to have to hold back there is Newton. And I believe that's Johnny Bell in the Ferrari. So it's given a slight advantage there to Shane Bowen, but he's not going to be able to do much with it on this lap anyway. Oh dear. I've just switched to Damon Stockton, and he's missing all of his bodywork.
Oh, that's not good.
That is a huge crash for Damon Stockton, and it happened between Indianapolis and Arnage. Going to get a replay of that very shortly. Just looks to me like he dipped a wheel into the gravel and just fired it straight into the wall. We're going to get a view of that now, losing both front splitter and rear downforce assembly, which is a shame for Damon Stockton because he definitely had potential in this one. So here is the point at which it happened, just on the exit of Indianapolis, and round he goes. Big hit to the wall. That took off all of his front end bodywork.
And the rear end too. Well, I guess he won't be short feeling the next stop and leapfrogging the leaders. We got the answer to that one.
Yeah, we certainly did.
Just too much.
Now, there was someone in that LMP1 that just went by him. Hang on a minute. I'm going to go back and check for that. I'm not quite sure what's going on there. But either way, for Damon Stockton, poor end to that race. So in comes Scott Newton making his way past Harlow. Harlow's just seemed incredibly calm throughout all of this race. He's not put a foot wrong so far, despite the initial incidents in the first opening laps. Since then, he's gotten himself calibrated, and he's doing incredibly well out there in the lead.
Yeah, he's not really faulted at all, has he? It's been flawless so far. Still got 38 minutes left, though, to finish it off.
In terms of the rest of our field, pretty much everyone is running in their own race at the moment. We're not seeing super close battles out on track. This is the way of it. Once the halfway point of the race has been passed. Down in the pits, Jin Huang from 9th. We did get some news from Jay there, but he cut out, so we'll bring it to you in a second. For this guy, it's been an 18.5-minute pit stop. It's Adam Richards. He's been in there for quite some time. Getting back out on the circuit finally. He's still got an awful lot of damage on that machine, but at least he's back out on track, and he's going to hopefully see the finish. Oh, goodness me. Scott Newton absolutely pounding his way around this circuit to try and keep the gap to Shane Bowen. Have a look at the closing speed there. Absolutely huge for Simon Mazzomo. Out there in the lead of the race, lap time's still consistent from him.
So easy now to make a mistake if you're Mizomo or Leslie leading the race and then you come up on a slower car. Because you've been out there non-stop now for about 2 hours. And he's still got most of a stint to go. Mizomo looks tired, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. The fatigue definitely setting in there. And these straights are a good opportunity to have a bit of a rest, but you've got to make sure that you don't go off into La La Land before the next braking zone. That's the issue with this circuit. It can bite you when you least expect it. You can see Mizomo trying to keep up as much energy as he can, keeping up the lead of this race, but you can see it is faltering gradually. LMP1 still has one more stop to go as well, so they're going to have to think about that too.
Be a relatively short stop, why not though? Because it's not a full stint for them still to come.
Yeah, no, it's only. I reckon we'll see LMP1s pitting for their final stop maybe around. Starting at the half-hour mark to go. Now we might see a couple of splash and dashes about 5 laps before the end. We'll have to wait and see.
Shane Bowen just went for a spin as well.
Oh. It's no good for him. Fighting hard with Scott Newton just before, and that happened down at, looks like... Yeah, down at Indianapolis, off into the gravel trap. Oh, it was very close to being exactly what Stockton did before, but Bowen on the brakes managed to get the car straightened out in time, fortunately.
So is Dan starting to catch Morton?
Starting to look like it. Gap is gradually reducing over time here. Morton on the straight coming towards Indianapolis, and Dance just exiting Mulsanne. You can see the gap ever so slowly coming down. It was 10.3 before Mulsanne. Now it's coming up on under 10 seconds. We got to remember as well, Dance and Morton also teammates. Morton, another Fitstone Motorsport driver. So it's either going to be a fun battle between teammates or a let's go, mate, I'll just let you go.
I think a fun battle with this much time remaining as squeezing by a slower car there.
Yes, it would be nice to have one more fun battle before the checkered flag flies here in the 2.4 hours of Le Mans. Round 7 of the International Division of the Majors Series, supporting Fight CRC. It's been a great turnout for this event, and I'm impressed to see the amount of drivers still circulating. Yes, we've had some problems. Oh no, that's Dean Mole again!
What's happened? Heading towards Indianapolis.
Oh no.
Exit of the corner.
Ah. Well, I tell you what, there's going to be a lot of frustration within the paddock after this race, because a lot of drivers have put on some excellent performances, but with stuff like this, it can all happen in the blink of an eye. And even for a driver like Dean Mole, who valiantly staked his claim for the lead of the race, it's that exit gravel trap at Indianapolis that will get you when you least expect it. So Simon Mizomo still under zero threat for the lead of this one. His teammate Harold Stadler is 27.6 behind him, with Daniel Stevens having an awful lot of adventures, still managing to run in third at the end of this.
D-Mole's not going to have any fast repairs left either, so he's probably going to be out of this one now until the end, unfortunately. Close for 12th. Johnny Bell under threat. Here comes Jack Alessi.
Oh, this is very close between the two of them for 12th and 13th in our GTE class. Side by side between Alessi and O'Leary. O'Leary, remember, is running in second place overall. He's lapping these guys. So this could potentially help out Jack Alessi if the incident... Oh, no, there isn't going to be an incident between these two. Have a look at that LMP1 go by. Incredible stuff. Johnny Bell's going to lift off here versus Thomas O'Leary and let him go. So ultimately, looks like Alessi is going to come into draft range up at the end of this one. Not over between he and Bell, as our LMP2 leaders are in the pits. This should be their final pit stop of the night, our LMP2 runners. Oh no, that is quite the issue there. That's Adam Richards, Mr. 18-minute pit stop, having troubles at Indianapolis. Managed to get going again, fortunately. And as our LMP2 leaders have exited the pits now, we'll take a quick replay, quick look at what happened to Richards here. Looks like just pushing a little too hard into the corner and finding the wall at the end of it. Mazomo, our LMP1 leader, has come into the pits. Harold Stadler joins him.
Jack Alessi. No.
What's happened to him? Oh no! That's a huge incident at the Porsche curves. We'll have to take a look at the replay for that one. John King, who we just saw in the LMP2 leading, has let by Will Leslie to take the lead back. So what happened to Alessi here? Oh, the car just got unsettled in the mid-corner. Oh! Okay. And that was Dave Trevethan. A very ignominious way to exit the race for Dave.
Fast track back to pit lane.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a look at the onboard here. Oh, and there's the hit. Just got completely blasted, didn't he?
Yeah.
Well, big shame for Dave, because he was one of the guys fighting for that top 6 in LMP2. He will have no such luck towards the end of this race. For Gavin Barber and Jonathan Ben, though, both of these guys driving for the same team, MF Racing, but for different divisions. Jonathan Ben, of course, we saw suffer a spin early on. He's been on a recovery since then. Very good draft versus his teammate here, and I reckon this is going to be done by the time they get to the next chicane.
Well, let's see if Ben tries to fight this then. They are teammates, but there's half an hour to go. Here comes a run for Barber. He lifts off.
Righto, so a little bit of working together here maybe to shorten the final pit stop for these guys. Don't know how much they would gain, but probably worth a try. And Ben, I reckon, running surround sound as well with his headphones around his neck like that. Having the BMW twin-turbo V8 blasting in your ears is always a nice experience, especially around Le Mans, where you can really let it run out to the max.
So what happened to Dwayne Burns on this lap?
That is a very good question.
He was stirred last lap. Now he's not. I don't know where he's gone.
Okay.
And John Kingston merged in second place somehow. Oh, King's in.
Yeah, King
Pit
had
stop
yet to
phase,
come
yeah.
in, and Burns' pit stop was fairly long. Three cars in LMP2 that haven't pitted yet, including Shane Bowen. Oh, have a look at is that O'Leary making his way past these two guys. Very tight quarters. at Arnage. But O'Leary continuing to run very strongly in second place in class. Ben falling back slightly from his teammate. I'll tell you what, for the LMP2 lead in this pit stop phase, Will Leslie has drawn it out once more. The gap between them, well, it's about 6 seconds or so between them all as King comes out of the pits there. Newton emerges behind him in 6th. Now, Newton is a guy we're going to have to watch out for towards the end. Can he fight against John King for that top 5? We should expect this to be Mizomo's in lap as well. Oh, no. Correct myself, he just came out of the pits. So that's going to be the last stop for Simon Mizomo. Not going to have to come back in towards the end. Anyone who pits after this point is basically good to the finish.
Yep, into the closing stages now with 25 minutes to go.
Gap between Morton and Dance has continued dropping, albeit slowly. It's under 10 seconds, but hasn't improved much since then. Dance still pushing incredibly hard. Tiny little mistake there on the exit of the last chicane, but nonetheless, still a good run from both of these guys in the Fitzstye Ferraris. 2 seconds quicker that lap was Cameron Dance than Philip Morton, so he is on a charge right now.
He is. See if he can get there then.
Well, with 24 minutes, if he continues taking out 2 seconds a lap and they have 7 laps to go, well, for GTE, it's going to certainly be doable for Cameron Dance to get onto the podium. Which would certainly be a good way to cap things off for him tonight after the issues that he's had. Get a good sense here for how grippy the Porsche 919 is through the Porsche curves. Looks like it's barely putting a foot wrong. It's got so much aero gluing it to the circuit at those high speeds. With Mizomo now completing his outlap, the tyres will be up to temperature and he'll be able to start doing those consistent lap times that we have known him for in the middle phase of the race.
Yeah, I think at this stage, if you haven't put yourself in a good spot already, you're playing catch-up and it's going to become very hard. You're relying on others because there's now just 20 minutes to go. Endurance racing, of course, it doesn't matter until the end where you are, but you've got to spend the entire race preparing yourself to be in the right spot. You can't afford to be playing catch-up in the final stint. Scott Newton at the moment is 2.3 seconds back. He's still going to get this overtake done.
Yeah, exactly right. And, oh, that's a problem for Newton right across the gravel at the first chicane. And that's going to mean it's probably going to be impossible for him to make up the gap to John King now. 9 seconds over now. That gap is, and oh, having to get up to speed with the car side by side as well. That is Peter Matson, who is one of the lower running LMP2s, ahead of Dave Trevethan, Stephen Williams, and Pierre Cousin. So we get a replay of Newton and just Little pinch of the rears in the braking zone. That's all it takes to send this HPD around.
Yeah, that's the issue with the high downforce cards. Is it doesn't take much to unsettle it and send it into a wild spin. And unfortunately, you found that out the hard way there as Dance props it up and over the curb there, uses some of the grass.
Yeah, Dance is certainly not leaving anything on the table here in his pursuit of Philip Morton. Gap is going to be under 8 seconds at the line. Dance with a nice clear track around him as well, in a very good position to make those times work. Philip Morton just coming into turn 1 himself as Dance crosses the line. Morton has got an LMP2 coming up on him in the form of Phil Otto. And depending on where Otto gets him, which should be down the Mulsanne, it's not going to help Dance all that much. There is Otto, and that's Jin Huang that he's making his way by. A very empty track ahead of Phil Otto now. Next car up, Philip Morton, just at the bottom left. Morton himself coming up to a bit of traffic too. Adam Richards, who's continuing to circulate. Morton getting held up ever so slightly on the exit here, and he's struggling to find a way past too. Richards staying right in the middle of the track, forcing Morton to pick a side. But no damage, no contact between the two. All good for now, maybe a little bit of frustration at the end of it.
Yeah. Burns and Bowen are closing in on each other as well here in the battle for third in LMP2.
Yes,
Burns
indeed.
starting to run him down.
Yeah, Bowen, with that pit stop phase, he's done very well putting himself up into third place. Remember, he was running before in around the 4th, 5th area. So now Mr. Burns has got his teammate in front of him. But as we saw, Burns did seem to be the faster of the two, especially at the start. So that has yet to work out between them. Matt Andrews bringing his Porsche in for the final time tonight. With 3.6 seconds between Burns and Bowen, and lap time comparison, Burns was 2 seconds faster on the previous lap, so he's got an awful lot of pace under his belt right now.
Yeah, 3.5. And what have we got left? Not long. We've got about 5 laps, haven't we?
Something to that effect, yeah. 5 laps when the LMP1 crosses the line next. Lap around here, 3 minutes and 20 seconds at the fastest, so not much time left for these guys to sort themselves out. Can Dwayne Burns make up 4 seconds in 5 laps?
If he doesn't make a mistake, it is definitely possible. I can see it happening.
Well, mistakes have been the order of the day for a lot of drivers in this field. It seemed especially early on, every other minute we were getting, X driver has gotten a slowdown, or this driver is losing pace because he's gotten a slowdown. It's been something that the drivers have had a little bit of trouble getting used to tonight. But it seems that as time has gone on, they've certainly sorted it out and are running nice, clean laps for the most part.
It's weird. It's almost gone the opposite of what you would expect from an endurance race. It started off with many mistakes, and they've gotten less and less as we've gone on. You normally expect it to go the other way.
Yeah, you do. So, the majors continuing to throw up surprises, it seems.
but still another good race to add to the calendar here in the 2020 Majors season. I mean, plenty of different races, and another good one here is our first one of the first race at Le Mans of the year. Only race at Le Mans of the year as well, I should say.
Yes, indeed. But as we've said before, this is going to be some good prep for a lot of drivers. Quite the wheel work from Shane Bowen. Some good experience for the official iRacing 24 Hours of Le Mans, which is happening later this month. A little bit of traffic there for Shane Bowen.
The Majors calendar made up of all the major events, across the world motorsport, but Le Mans is the crown jewel in it, isn't it?
It certainly is. It's the race that everyone wants to win. It's the most prestigious race in the world. Along with Indy, of course.
Or Daytona.
But I reckon if you take the ovals out of it, I reckon Le Mans is definitely up there. Don't mention the Monaco Grand Prix, Jay. This is sports car racing. It's better. Hashtag probably never, Jay says. Well, as we enter these final 15 minutes of the race, we do have to think about the next round of the Majors series, which is the Indy at Road America. And that is going to be happening in a couple weeks' time on the 28th of June. 55 laps at Road America in the Dallara IR18 IndyCar. So a few of these guys will be used to a stiff downforce heavy machine, but our GTE drivers may have to adapt a little more.
Yeah. And that's one of the good things about this season. You don't ever really get the same combos, so you've got to be diverse, and your champion at the end of it all is someone that could adapt to a variety of different cars and tracks, and different combinations.
Daniel Stevens keeping it cool, calm and collected there in third place. Looked like it was almost all over for him early on, but he's put on a great drive throughout the middle and towards the end. Just keeping the lap times up, keeping them consistent as well. He's been running 322s for the most part, with a slight blip in traffic occasionally, which is the kind of driving that you would expect at Le Mans. Daniel Stevens has done very well to consolidate a podium here.
Don't say yet. So far.
Yes, I'm saying he has done well so far, yes.
There you go. That commentator's curse has been in full effect so far today, hasn't it?
Oh, it certainly has, and I'm definitely not looking forward to the next instance. Oh, here we go. A little bit of GT traffic in the Porsche curves. You'll be able to see the downforce of the Porsche work here. Round the outside of the BMW and through into the left-hander. Keeps it on track for good measure as well. I noticed that we definitely saw some aggressive use of the curbs in qualifying, especially at the last chicane, but you can see that drivers now into that rhythm, they are avoiding the curbs. They're not going to put their car into any unnecessary danger if they can help it. Because these last few minutes of the race are the ones that count the most.
And they're the toughest. They seem to take an eternity, don't they?
Yeah. We certainly do. I've been there. Those last 10 minutes feel like half an hour occasionally. Modem simulation replay. This is Scott Newton once again. Oh no, it's John King that we're looking at, and that is a spin at the Ford chicane for the Kinetic driver. So, despite Newton's earlier mistake, it means that he's able to get the move done on John King anyway and put himself back up into 5th place in class. That's another one of the things about endurance racing, Ryan, is patience. You know, you might have a bad run early on, but stick with it, and the guy in front of you might make a mistake.
Exactly. This is really going to close up now. It's a second between them. Will Leslie, by the way, has pulled away from Magnussen very comfortably. They were in a very close fight for most of the race, but just broken apart now to the end. Leslie's put his foot down.
Yeah, he certainly has. That's quite the lead that he's got over his teammate Magnussen, just coming into Indianapolis while Magnussen just near the turn-in point. So for Will Leslie and Matthias Magnussen, it's very comfortable 1-2 here for Kinetic Racing. All they have to do is keep it together for the next 10 minutes. Shane Bowen and Dwayne Burns could heat up as well. As Bowen with a little bit of a mistake at Arnage as he was making his way past Adam Richards. Burns himself continuing to chip away at that gap between he and his teammate, but it looks like it's extended by a few tenths due to traffic and other elements. So time rapidly running out for Mr. Burns there. Coming up on GT traffic in the middle of the Porsche curves as well, not going to help him out. Adam Richards, though, stays wide and lets him go. And Shane Bowen has jumped into the pits.
Oh.
We've just seen there. Interesting. Splash and dash. "13 laps in this stint for Shane Bowen, so that is the reason why he managed to rocket himself up into that 3rd place. Still had to come in. Hello indeed, because Will Leslie and Matthias Magnussen are starting to come together, aren't they?
What was I just saying?
What were you just saying, indeed?
That the gap had stretched out and Leslie had put his foot down.
Yeah. Well, endurance racing being endurance racing, things can change at the flip of a coin, can't they? Shane Bowen is out of the pits now, and just alongside the LMP1 of Eric Thorpe. But Magnussen and Leslie, gap under 2 seconds now. I feel like Magnussen might have just been holding back a little bit, preserving his tyres for a final attack, potentially.
I think you're probably right. And this is going to be a great battle between the two Kinetic cars. Kinetic Casuals leading, Kinetic International in second. So the junior team leading the pros.
Reminds me of the 2008 Italian Grand Prix. Well, it's staying consistent down the straight. They're not in draft range just yet. The draft at Le Mans, it starts to come into a real effect from about 1.5 seconds back onwards. So still a couple of tenths that Magnussen needs to make up on Leslie before he can let the slipstream do some of the work for him. Philip Morton and Cameron Dance are pretty close as well for 3rd place in GTE. Looks like Dance not... where is he? He's actually a bit further back than I thought he would be, is Dance. Still 9 seconds. My apologies, everyone. But Leslie and Magnussen Magnussen's going to be held up ever so slightly there with the GT, but no harm, no foul. Eric Thorpe, meanwhile, chasing down Matt Andrews for 4th place in LMP1, under 4 seconds between them. And remember, Eric Thorpe was our pole sitter, and he would have been the leader of this race were it not for a mistake at the first couple of corners on lap 1. So he's been fighting his way through the entire time, has Eric. And if he could potentially get a 4th place from this, it would certainly be a little bit of consolation for the issues he's had tonight. But, oh, hello. What's going on there?
What?
Is that Daniel Stevens? No, it was Matt Andrews off in the grass. So that is the move completed then for Eric Thorpe. He is up into 4th place. Let's see what happened to Andrews down here at Mulsanne, making his way past Scott Newton and just locked up. Big shame there for Matt Andrews, and that's one of the things you got to keep track of in the LMP1 cars. The moment you lock them, it's very difficult to unlock the wheels because remember the energy regeneration through the brakes. 1.3 seconds now between Leslie and Magnussen. The gap is continuing to close. This is going to be their penultimate lap. It's under a second now. A little bit of a draft there from Johnny Bell for Matthias Magnussen, helping him out there in his pursuit of his teammate. We've got the LMP1 leader coming through as well. Or one of the Porsches at the very least. 0.6 of a second now. Magnussen is on fire. The question is for Magnussen, he doesn't want to do it too early. Because if he gets it done and cannot get a gap before they get to the Mulsanne straight next, then Leslie's just going to come right back at him and retake the lead. So Magnussen needs to be careful here.
Might be worth leaving it to the final straight at the final lap. And then he knows that Leslie can't come back.
Yeah, I would agree. Under 0.4 though. And you can see the draft really starting to creep up for Matthias Magnussen coming up to Mulsanne. Ever closer in the braking zone. Little micro slide for Will Leslie in the lead. But it hasn't hurt him that much. Making their way past another bit of GT traffic here in the form of Gavin Barber. They're going to clear him. They're both going to clear him before Indianapolis. Tell you what, Magnussen, his driving through the slower portions of the course has been very good. That's Will Leslie pushing a bit too hard out of Arnage. As a result, it's giving another run here to Magnussen. But he's going to have to stay behind in the Porsche curves and possibly have the gap extend a little more due to the aero push. We don't know how Kinetic have set up their cars to go following others. But Magnussen trying his best to keep within the range of Will Leslie. Has no choice but to give up a car length or so through the Porsche curves, though. It's going to be final lap for these guys as they cross the line. So it is on for the lead in LMP2. And Simon Mazzomo has begun his final lap out there in the lead in LMP1. And despite his mistakes early on, it's been a lovely consistent drive from the Fitstein number 969. He holds a lead of over 37 seconds from his teammate Harold Stadler. He's employed the boost, he's employed the downforce beautifully. The main thing is keeping it out of trouble relative to other drivers, because, I mean, if you think about it, Ryan, Mizomo's incidents weren't actually as race-threatening as the other errors we've seen LMP1 drivers make. The other incidents have been much more spectacular for sure, but Mizomo has managed to get away with it.
Yeah, he's managed to recover well and was very fortunate to not have a massive incident as such, but at the moment he's just got half a lap left to navigate.
Yep, and just a few bits of traffic as well, but we're continuing to look at the lead here for LMP2. 0.5 of a second between Will Leslie and Matthias Magnussen. Magnussen made huge gains over the last lap. Can he translate those gains into a win for Kinetic? They're going to finish 1-2 either way, but he would definitely like to be the one on the top step of that podium. But Will Leslie has been the class of the LMP2 field throughout all of this race. He started on pole. He's led most of the laps here today. And he actually going defensive, trying to break the draft of his teammate. He's not willing to give this up easily.
I wonder if Magnussen's happy to sit in second, maybe even.
Perhaps. We shall have to wait and see. Because it's going to be in the final sections of the course that it works out that way for him. So with these guys in Indianapolis coming up to the last potential place, he can fire one up the inside as Magnussen, and he's not going to do it. Simon Mizomo, meanwhile, taking a dominant victory in LMP1, and I think that's the first time we've seen him smile all night. Simon Mizomo takes victory in round 7 of the International Majors at Le Mans. I feel every bit of that celebration. Well done, Simon. Great drive. Look at him go. And Jackson Suzlin Harlow crosses the line right behind him to take victory in the GTE class as well. An absolutely dominant run from Jackson Harlow. It's not over for the lead in LMP2 though. Will Leslie holds on from Matthias Magnussen, and it looks like Magnussen's chances are now all used up. There's only the chicanes to go, and that is not an overtaking maneuver, especially not from that far back. So Will Leslie has 4, then 3, then 2, then 1 corner to go. He takes the LMP2 victory for Kinetic, and Matthias Magnussen follows him to make it a Kinetic 1-2. An excellent run from what has been the best team in the International Majors over the course of its running.
And that's a great 1-2 finish for them in LMP2. And you can see from Mizomo's reaction how hard this race is and how much it means to win it. It may not be the full 24 hours, but Le Mans is still just as prestigious as it is.
One more look at Simon Mizomo as he tours down the Mulsanne Straight alongside Jackson Harlow. The time for celebration. And Harlow pulls off, but Mizomo, well, all he can do right now is just coast, because he's put in a metric ton of effort to get this race done. He overcame mistakes. He overcame incidents from other LMP1s to come home for this victory. And there's Harlow going for a little bit of an interesting celebration in the background. Interesting also, with Harold Stadler coming home in second in LMP1, that's a 1-2 for Fitzstye as well. So they are the supreme victors in LMP1 at the moment, with Daniel Stevens coming home in third to get MFR onto the podium. But Harlow's going to be celebrating this for a long time to come, leaving down many tracks of rubber at the Mulsanne chicanes. Well, that's going to be the end of it. Official results then. Simon Mizomo and Harold Stadler taking a Fitzstye Motorsports 1-2 in the LMP1 class, bringing their Porsches home. Daniel Stevens makes it an all-Porsche podium, bringing the MF Racing Pro Porsche into third. Eric Thorpe started on pole, but losing a few laps due to an incident on the first lap. He fights back to 4th place. Matt Andrews completing the top 5. Dean Mole, one of the heartbreak stories of this one, challenging for the win against Simon Mazzomo, but ultimately not able to capitalize and making a mistake in Indianapolis. Going to our LMP2 results, Will Leslie takes victory from Matthias Magnussen. It is a 1-2 for Kinetic Racing, with Dwayne Burns and Shane Bowen completing the top 4 for Avatar Auto Racing. Scott Newton comes home in 5th, with John King holding on to 6th. Last car to finish on the lead lap in that class, with Martin Houston, Phil Otto, Colin Herman, and Aaron Pascoe rounding out the top 10. Peter Matson and Stephen Williams also finding the finish, with Pierre Cousin 5 laps down, Dave Trevethan, Damon Stockton, and Michael Skurlock all retiring. Now let's have a look at the GTE results, Ryan.
Commanding victory for Jackson Susan Harlow in the end, coming home with that win over Thomas O'Leary, who come home in 2nd. Cameron Dance rounded off the podium ahead of SXX Finstyle Motorsport teammate and Philip Morton. Giovanni Pacifici drove it home to run out the top 5. Alex Court and Wayne Taylor were the last 2 cars on their lead lap. The Matthew Cloet, Gavin Barber, Johnny Bell were the top 10. Behind there, Jonathan Ben, Jin Huang, Jamie King-Scott, Jack Alessi, Bradley Matheson, and Adam Richards rounded out your GTE field.
Well, that is the field. And very unfortunate for Robert Northway as well, the first proper retirement of this race. So now we move into our post-race coverage. The first driver we're going to speak to is our LMP1 race victor, Simon Mazzomo. Simon, welcome to the commentary box. Congratulations. What a drive from you. It was there were a few mistakes on the way, though, which did seem frustrating from your end.
Yeah, super frustrating. Just want to say for start, condolences to Eric. This was his to win. I'm not going to knock it. I'm so glad I won it, but he probably would have been the class of the field today. But yeah, just not getting position, like getting the lead, and then just sort of making little tiny mistakes that I shouldn't be making. Just especially in that second stint. Obviously opted to only take front tyres and not rears, and the balance of the car for the first sort of 2-3 laps was just really bad. So that was sort of hard to get over, but once I sort of got into a bit of a rhythm and started to catch Dean again, it was just after that pit stops went well, managed to get a bit of a gap, and it was just for the rest of the race it was just managing the gap back to Harold at that point. So I was confident I had the pace to hold him. It was just, finishing the job, really.
Well, nonetheless, it's an incredible victory for you, and definitely going to bring in a good haul of championship points for the second half of the majors season. Yeah,
definitely. I'm only in as a guest for the rest of the series, so I've only got one more race I can do, but yeah, no, it was good. I mainly wanted to do it to get practice in for next weekend, obviously the big one, the Le Mans 24. Maybe next weekend, maybe weekend after. But yeah, to get in practice for that, and I thought, well, this is going to be a good place to get a lot of practice. There's a lot of quick guys, and it's a really well run series. So I thought, yeah, I'll jump in and have a go. But didn't expect to come away with a win though. That was that's pretty awesome.
All right, well, before we let you go, Simon, anyone you'd like to thank for TechSense Fitstyle Motorsport?
Big thanks to the guys. They've been big supporters lately. I've been a bit down on myself, but they've been sort of, keeping my head above water and keep pushing me on. So really enjoying my racing with them at the moment. Obviously, our sponsors, Renval, TechSense, Demon Tweaks, Fight CRC, and all the boys for their work. It's really appreciated.
Thank you very much for joining us, Simon Mazzomo, your overall race victor in the 2.4 hours of Le Mans Round 7 of the Majors Series. Unfortunately, that is all we've got time for here tonight, but that brings to an end proceedings. And Ryan, it was a typical Majors race, I reckon. It was a very consistent level of competition, and an awful lot of drivers out there bringing up some surprises.
Yes, the great battles, right? down throughout the order in all three classes, and I think deserving victors all round in LMP1, LMP2, and GTE. I think they're all going to be very happy with that. Some good team results as well, and going to be some shake-ups for championship standings moving forward for the second half of the season.
It certainly is, and the second half of the Majors season is going to kick off in 2 weeks' time at Road America. IndyCars, wait for it, it's going to be excellent. We'll see you at that time in this place on the iRacing Esports Network. From all of us here at SimSpeed TV, it's bye for now, but not forever.
This is fantastic. This is GT racing right now.
He's got traction, he's going the outside of both of them! Maloney!
Oh, he's taking Anderson. Anderson's up to him.
Oh my god! Big crash! Oh my goodness, half the field's gonna get rolled!
Second very close. These guys are want to make their way through the field very quickly. Oh, there we go. Oh no! That's massive! This is it! This is over! I can't believe this! Oh my god!
God, what?